A girl sends a message saying she's going to break up, and the protagonist starts crying. He's in disbelief, wondering if it's a joke. He assumes she isn't serious because he had plans for their future together and was even considering marriage. However, he gets blocked and agonizes in his chair. A friend is about to call him to hang out but finds him passed out instead. The friend tries to help, but the protagonist storms out, slamming the door behind him. His friends are frustrated with him because he can't maintain a relationship. Chen Yuan, known for being a simp, always follows girls around, spending money on them without success. He's furious that after 3 years, he got nowhere with Shutong. The scene shifts to them talking, with a group of people watching. The protagonist pleads for forgiveness and gives her a piglet plush toy, her favorite animal. Onlookers gossip that he worked 4 jobs just to support her. Shutong says everything is fine but admits that, after thinking it over, she wants to reunite with her ex. The protagonist, who knows her ex, calls him a jerk and reminds her that he cheated and left her pregnant. Suddenly, a car pulls up, and a guy calls her to get in. Shutong's ex doesn't like seeing them together and drives her away while she says it's for the best. At a convenience store, the protagonist is devastated. He thinks he'll never have a relationship because he's too much of a pushover. Then, a system appears, displaying his information. His name is Chen Yuan, he has 230 Chinese coins in personal wealth, 1 strength point, and a staggering 90 billion Chinese coins for being a simp. He's confused by what's happening. A girl approaches, asking if something is wrong because he's staring at her chest. The protagonist looks at her and starts analyzing her stats. The system reveals her name is Su Lu, she's 21 years old, 165 centimeters tall, weighs 49 kilograms, and has a beauty rating of nearly 8. Her favorability towards him is at -50. The system informs him that if a woman's favorability reaches 95 points, she can become his simp. The protagonist is confused, wondering if he has to spend the 90 billion coins on women. The system clarifies that the money has been credited to his card and can only be spent on women. Once he reaches 95 favorability points, he gets back 1/10 of the amount spent along with other rewards. Now convinced, the protagonist invites Su Lu to eat and offers to pay for everything. The system informs him he's ready to start spending, and when a girl reaches 95 points, he'll also gain 5 reward points to enhance his abilities. Su Lu, eyeing him, asks if he's trying to show off his wealth. She's unsure if he's flirting with her and whether he'll succeed. The protagonist recalls how she once made a guy spend over 30,000 with just 3 words. He responds to her teasing, saying if she doesn't test him, she'll never know. She accepts and challenges him to buy snacks for the entire class. Su Lu looks down on him, thinking he dresses like a beggar, yet dares to flirt with her. Determined, the protagonist spends 50,000 without hesitation. The people gossiping about him realize he's wealthy but doesn't dress like it. He tells Su Lu to relax, assuring her the amount is nothing to him. Not missing a beat, he asks her to add him on social media. Su Lu is puzzled, wondering if he's secretly a rich second-generation heir. She agrees to add him but insists they visit a special place first, a Gucci store. She claims she's not materialistic but just wants to be sure of his sincerity. Given his appearance, the protagonist fears being thrown out. But Chen Yuan reassures Su Lu, telling her she can buy whatever she wants. Inside the store, the protagonist sees his ex with someone. She's talking with Shanghai about a bag she's trying on. Shutong notices the protagonist isn't alone. Su Lu asks if that's his ex, suggesting it might be a bad time for them to be there. He replies there's no such thing as bad timing, they arrived at the perfect moment. Su Lu asks the store clerk about a specific spring collection bag. The clerk informs her that only 1 unit remains, and Shutong is trying it on. Confused, Shutong says she'll show the difference between a loser and someone like Shanghai. She then hints that her birthday is coming up. Zheng Kai is confused since her birthday was recent, but she explains that her previous birthday was based on the lunar calendar, and people also celebrate their solar calendar birthdays. Zheng Kai, taken aback, replies, "Don't you know I dislike materialistic girls? You're not with me for money, right?" Shutong is speechless. After this exchange, Su Lu takes the bag from Shutong, saying she'll buy it since it seems Shutong doesn't have the funds. Using the protagonist's money, he gains 20 favorability points with Su Lu. Swiping the card earns him another 20 points, and as Su Lu admires the bag, he gains another 20. The protagonist is thrilled, realizing how money can change things, and the bag alone helped him gain 60 points. At this pace, he'll soon max out her favorability. However, he worries that if he reaches 95 favorability points without spending much, only on inexpensive items like this bag, he won't receive a significant refund. The store attendants seem perplexed, commenting that some guys look wealthy but don't like to spend on their girlfriends, while the poorly dressed protagonist is giving Su-lu the best treatment. Shutong is left humiliated, sitting on the floor, while Su-lu stands tall, saying that a bag is like a boyfriend, you should hold on to it tightly. She glances at the protagonist, thinking she can't afford to lose him, and offers him a few compliments. With tears in her eyes, Shutong bumps into him, accusing him of going too far. Too far? The protagonist laughs. Shutong, you still have a lot to go through. But with her aggressive move, the system activates a second relationship profile. It starts displaying Shutong's information: 21 years old, 163 centimeters tall, weighing 49 kilograms. Her attractiveness rating is slightly higher than Su-lu's, and her favorability starts at -10, with the goal still being to reach 95. Satisfied? Did I do well? Where are we heading next? Su-lu asks. The protagonist replies that the night is just beginning and he has plenty of money, asking if she's content with only one bag. She then starts grabbing everything she can, ending up with her hands full of shopping bags. The protagonist hands over his card, and the store attendants assure him that the purchases will be delivered to his address once completed. Chen Yuan keeps gaining favorability with Su-lu, 5 points with each card swipe. Su-lu, now tired from buying so much, doesn't even know where she'll store all her new clothes. No problem, says the protagonist. I'll buy you a house. However, this bold move causes him to lose some favorability. Su-lu advises him to take it easy since they've already spent a lot. The protagonist realizes he scared her, understanding that even for a multimillionaire, buying a house so quickly is a bit excessive. Su-lu, a junior at the College of Fine Arts, 21 years old, 49 kilograms, and with black as her favorite color, catches the protagonist's attention as he subtly shows off how well he knows her. He asks the store attendant if they have a gift card for Su-lu, and they confirm. The protagonist then loads 500,000 credits onto the card for her to use anytime she wants, offering it as an apology for the misunderstanding. Su-lu blushes, feeling happy. The protagonist whispers in her ear, if you can't resist, just give in. Oh, you're such a bad boy. Su-lu giggles, giving him another 30 favorability points. The store attendants go wild, amazed at how attentive and caring he is towards her. The protagonist reflects that having money makes flirting so much easier. Su-lu asks him why, despite buying so much for her, he hasn't bought any clothes for himself. The protagonist jokes that he doesn't have much money. Wanting to impress him, Su-lu takes the lead, spending 50,000 of her father's money to treat the protagonist to a haircut, some new clothes, and sneakers. She's impressed by his transformation and the protagonist gains another 5 favorability points, then another 5, and another. He asks if he did something wrong since he's never spent money on himself before. Su-lu, touching Chen Yuan's chin, reassures him, saying there's nothing wrong at all, and that now they make a perfect couple. She thanks him for such a special day, and her favorability reaches 68 points. Back at the dorm, his friends ask why he's all dressed up and what he was doing all day. Chen Yuan casually mentions he was out with Su-lu. His friends offer some advice, reminding him that not long ago he was heartbroken over his ex, and now he's with Su-lu. They suggest he should be careful, or he'll end up broke. The protagonist thanks them for the advice, but shortly after, he receives a message from Shutong, saying that if he hates her, they should just delete each other's numbers. Chen Yuan looks at his phone, thinking about how to raise her favorability, knowing she wants to cut ties, but he's determined to make money from her. He responds, of course not. How could I ever hate you? You'll always have a special place in my heart. Shutong replies, revealing that she's only with her current guy because her mother is sick and needs 50,000 for medical treatment. Shocked that she was just toying with him, Shutong suddenly receives a notification, 50,000 transferred from the protagonist. Her friend, noticing, asks who sent the money. My ex, she answers. Wait, Chen Yuan? Didn't you dump him today? How is that loser this rich? Shutong starts second-guessing her decision to leave him. Despite sending her the 50,000, the protagonist only gains 5 favorability points. Shutong bombards him with questions. Why did he send the money? Where did it come from? Why was Su Lila with him? Why didn't he buy her a bag? And if he's secretly a rich heir? The protagonist silences her after receiving 15 messages in a row and wonders if there's a more fun way to spend money on women. He notices a girl doing a live stream, with just a few minutes left before she logs off. Frustrated, she asks if anyone's going to send gifts or if she should end the stream. The protagonist sees that he can send up to 1 million in gifts and decides it's more exciting than buying bags. He begins sending a series of gifts, and the girl thanks him for sending a rocket. But soon, 100 rockets flood her screen. The live chat erupts with jealousy and confusion, asking who sent all the gifts. Realizing the attention money can buy, the protagonist sends 900 more rockets, causing the girl's phone to crash. At the company where she does her streams, an employee informs the boss that something extraordinary has happened. A guy just spent 10 million on Xiaomi's stream. The staff is in disbelief, questioning if he's laundering money or working with the company. All the other streamers notice the protagonist's nickname and are amazed by his generosity, rushing to send him private messages. Chen Yuan simply watches the messages roll in. The girl who received the gifts wonders if it's all real, but then a man carrying a sign approaches her, saying he needs to get the protagonist's contact information and that he'll get a raise for it. She sends the protagonist a message, thanking him for the gifts and asking if he's still in the live chat, as she's about to log off. However, Chen Yuan had already gone to bed after a full day of spending money. The next morning, his friends are buzzing about the news of a guy who spent 10 million on a live stream, and they start discussing what they would do with that kind of money. The protagonist realizes he spent all that money without establishing any real connection, so he opens TikTok and sees many girls messaging him. One woman, who is 28 and divorced, invites him to meet her at her studio, frustrated by his lack of response. But the protagonist isn't excited, as these interactions don't increase his favorability. Meanwhile, his friends are getting ready to go out, and he asks where they're headed without him. They remind him they're going to see Zhao Yuqi, the campus goddess, and they're going early to catch a close glimpse of her. His friends joke that he usually rushes ahead to be there from the moment she arrives until she leaves. A system screen appears, showing Zhao Yuqi's information, the campus beauty, vice president of the student council, and the dream girl for every male student. She's level 10 in piano, an athlete, and skilled in ballet and fencing. Her exceptional talents make her unattainable, and no one has managed to get close to her in the past 3 years. The protagonist feels challenged, knowing that winning her over will require more effort and money. Nearby, Su Tang is chatting with her friends, saying that Chen Yuan only learned how to dress well after they broke up, and she's worried he might fight with Sheng Kai because of her. Her favorability keeps rising, another 10 points, another 10 points. The protagonist, irritated, dismisses it as nonsense, thinking the only reason her favorability is going up is because of his new look. But his real target is Zhao Yuqi. One of the guys nearby talks about wanting to see how his boss plans to win over the goddess Zhao Yuqi, saying she'll eventually fall for him. He confidently approaches her and asks for her contact information. Another guy interrupts, asking what he's doing. Unfazed, the first guy continues, insisting that Zhao Yuqi add him, saying he wants to be friends. The angry guy accuses him of causing trouble and demands to know what he plans to do with her. Startled, the first guy claims it's a misunderstanding and that he just wants to join the student union for advice, since she's the vice president. The angry guy calls him out, saying that's no excuse to flirt with her, labeling him a pervert. But the protagonist steps forward and asks Zhao Yuqi if she can add him on Snapchat. She looks confused, unsure why so much is happening. The protagonist stays confident, sure she will add him. The president of the student union remarks that the protagonist is brave for putting himself out there despite being ridiculed. The other guy admits the protagonist is even more handsome than the last person who tried to approach her and asks if he, too, wants to join the student union. The protagonist coolly replies that he's not interested in the union, leaving the guy puzzled as to why he wants Zhao Yuqi's contact information. Chen Yuan casually says he just wants to pursue her. Students from another class observe the scene, noting that another guy is trying to talk to her, but at least the protagonist is daring. Zhao Yuqi eventually gives him her contact details. Xu Bang's friend asks what's happening between them. The protagonist replies, "I like beautiful women. Why should I hide that? Sometimes the simplest approach works best. What woman doesn't like being pursued?" The system indicates that he has formed a bootlicker relationship with her, but with zero favorability. The protagonist is happy but confused, wondering why she gave him her contact despite the lack of favorability. Outside the class, his friends congratulate him for getting Zhao Yuqi's contact, joking that he's come a long way from being a bootlicker to looking confident. One of his friends teases him, saying if he gets close to the student president, he'll need to introduce them to her friends. The protagonist doubts he'll manage to speak to her, thinking they're exaggerating since she's the most beautiful girl on campus. A guy behind him calls him a loser but admits he has good taste, revealing himself as the one who tried to hit on Zhao Yuqi earlier and got rejected. The guy begins mocking the protagonist, saying he's proud for nothing since all he got was her number, and asks if Chen Yuan even knows who he is. But the protagonist just laughs at him. Then, Su Liao appears, asking why Chen Yuan took so long and mentioning she's been waiting for him. Everyone is shocked that Su Liao, known for rejecting all kinds of guys, was waiting for him. The protagonist invites her to dinner as an apology for making her wait. Chu Liao asks if she looks pretty in the clothes he bought for her. Meanwhile, an angry Chu Tong listens nearby. The protagonist comments that no girl looks pretty just because of clothes. As the couple walks away, everyone watches them. The rejected guy mutters that he doesn't understand how he was just one step behind the protagonist, but stops complaining when he notices Chu Tong nearby, wondering who she is. Chu Liao hands him a drawing she made of him, saying she stayed up all night working on it and warns that if he throws it away, she'll never forgive him. The protagonist, surprised, mentions that this is the first time in his life he's ever received a gift from a girl, and she asks if he liked it. He looks at her and questions whether all this is just a ploy to keep him around. Chu Liao grows uncertain, wondering if he really liked the drawing since he doesn't seem happy. He then asks if she'll give him better gifts in the future or just more drawings. Frustrated, she demands the drawing back, but he refuses, saying he'll keep it as a family heirloom. The protagonist tells her he values her more as a person than any gift she could give. Impressed by his smooth talking, she gains another 5 favorability points. The protagonist thinks that she wants to turn him into her obedient follower, but he plans to use her for financial gain. Suddenly, a guy interrupts, asking if Chu Liao is still going to do her nails and questioning who the protagonist is, assuming he's wealthy. The protagonist figures this guy is just another one of Chu Liao's admirers, noting that this kind of thing happens often. Chu Liao responds coldly, saying she doesn't know who this guy is and that he doesn't control her. The protagonist steps forward, introducing himself and asking the guy for his name and how long he's been following Chu Liao. The guy introduces himself as Yang Yu from the arts department, explaining that he's been following her for 6 months. The protagonist tells him that's nothing and shares a personal story about how he once followed a girl for 3 years, worked multiple jobs, and lived on bread, only to be replaced by a guy with a Mercedes-Benz. Yang Yu is confused by this story, but the protagonist uses it to inspire him, saying that when people turn their backs on you, it should drive you to improve. He encourages Yang Yu to go back to his dorm and make her regret her decisions. Yang Yu is moved to tears by the speech. Even Chu Liao seems confused, wondering why Yang Yu is crying, awkwardly explaining that he's just a friend. The protagonist responds by saying he doesn't care about her past, but points out that she doesn't respect herself or him. He then rips up the drawing and tells her that she can use the card he gave her, but he doesn't want to see her again until she sorts out her relationships. He's curious to see how she'll handle this situation since it's the first time something like this has happened. Chu Liao starts to regret her actions, realizing that the protagonist is the first person who truly cared for her. And she gains another 5 favorability points. Meanwhile, Yang Yu reflects on how he's grown, having resolved things with Chu Liao, and decides it's time to move on. He heads over to Zhao Yuqi, who's live streaming. She seems innocent, not having done anything to be hated for, and introduces herself as Kiki. She's practicing the piano, streaming for just 2 days, and asking people to support her. The protagonist finds her cute and wonders if she's one of those girls who seems cold but is actually warm-hearted. Arrogantly, he notices that her view count is low and thinks it's disappointing. At that moment, Xiaomi messages him, asking where he is. He doesn't remember her at first, but she reminds him that he sent her many gifts during her live stream. He jokes that he didn't forget and asks if she's free to meet up. She says she's busy, and he dismisses her message. Xiaomi asks him not to be upset and promises a special live stream. Annoyed, the protagonist grumbles that she's still trying to get him to send more gifts, despite already spending over 10 million. Frustrated, he decides to give his money to Zhao Yuqi instead. A duel begins on the live stream, where 2 streamers compete to see who can receive more donations. The protagonist is excited to see Zhao Yuqi in the duel and asks who her opponent is. Xiaomi, confident in her chances, laughs, sure that she'll win against the newcomer. The protagonist isn't sure who will win, and the duel begins. Xiaomi quickly racks up 10,000 points, while Zhao Yuqi only has 206. But Zhao Yuqi gives her all, using her talent, charisma, and creativity to create a masterpiece. Xiaomi taunts Zhao Yuqi, telling her to give up since she has a wealthy supporter, Chen Yuan. The chat goes wild over the duel. Xiaomi is confident that her sponsor will be impressed and donate more to her. Just then, a rocket animation appears on the screen, and Xiaomi believes Chen Yuan has arrived to support her. She prepares to thank him, but to her shock, all the rockets were sent to Zhao Yuqi's stream. Zhao Yuqi's points skyrocket to 152,000, and a notification pops up saying, Lonely Smokey donated 1,000 rockets to Kiki. Zhao Yuqi is stunned, and Xiaomi is furious that the rockets weren't for her. A guy with a sign shows up, demanding to know why Xiaomi didn't receive the donations. Trembling, Xiaomi apologizes to the audience, saying she needs to deal with something, and abruptly ends her stream. The protagonist comments that she can't handle it when he gives gifts to someone else and that he wanted to see her reaction. He hopes Xiao Yuqi won't disappoint, considering how much he spent on her. At the company, everyone goes wild, assuming the mysterious donor is back at it again. They speculate that the protagonist must be the son of some wealthy prince to pull off such a stunt. My god, Smokey donated another 10 million to a girl who plays the piano. Does he love music? One streamer exclaims, jokingly telling someone to grab a triangle. Kiki's friend suggests that Xiao Yuqi might become an internet celebrity, and the idea impresses her. Yuki responds that trying to please men online doesn't seem like a long-term plan. She stresses that the most important thing for a woman is to build a financially stable and personally independent career. Kiki's friend asks if she knows the guy, but Kiki admits she has no idea who it is. Kiki says she wants to send a thank you message for the gifts. Her friend is upset, reminding her that she said she didn't want to get involved with anyone. Then, she exclaims that maybe Kiki does know the guy, suggesting he must be the son of someone very wealthy. She speculates that he's extremely talented and was raised in a rich family but chooses to live an ordinary life, perhaps falling for a regular girl and deciding to pursue her as an ordinary man. She explains her theory, saying it must be that. Her friend dismisses the idea, telling Kiki she's been watching too many dramas. Kiki imagines how difficult his life must be, pretending to be a regular guy. Her friend tells her it's late and she should go to bed, but Kiki is eager to thank Chen. The protagonist looks at his phone and sees a message from a girl asking if he's free to have dinner. He replies, saying he wants to eat his favorite dish, crayfish. She agrees and tells him to meet her at the school gate in the afternoon. She didn't ask where I got the money for the gifts, just invited me to dinner, the protagonist thinks, staring at his phone. The next morning, the protagonist arrives at school on his scooter. A guy standing next to a Mercedes asks if he's waiting for someone. The protagonist replies, asking if the guy is waiting for someone too. The guy says he's waiting for his girlfriend. Then the pianist arrives, and the guy warns the protagonist not to stare too much, saying that to win over a girl like her, you need to work hard and have lots of money, otherwise, he'll take all the beautiful girls. Kiki spots the protagonist and imagines him as a hero on a motorcycle. She runs toward him. The guy assumes she's headed for his car, but she hops on the protagonist's scooter instead, leaving him stunned. He wonders, what's the point of having so much money? They ride off on the scooter, and Kiki imagines herself as his fiancée. They arrive at the restaurant and order some spicy crayfish. When the dish arrives, they think it looks amazing. The protagonist romantically sets the table for her, and she's impressed that even though he could go to expensive restaurants, he hasn't forgotten how to be a gentleman. His actions remind her of someone from a noble family, disciplined and refined. The protagonist begins eating the crayfish, and Kiki comments that it must be the smallest one he's ever eaten. Kiki is amazed that Chen Yuan is dining with her, thinking he must want a peaceful, uncomplicated life. She notes how gentle he is, comparing him to a flower. The protagonist wonders why he suddenly gained another 10 favorability points. Then, Kiki offers to peel a crayfish for him. Just as he's about to eat, someone arrives. It's Shutong again, wondering if she just saw Kiki feeding Chen Yuan. She turns to her boyfriend and suggests finding a less crowded spot, but her boyfriend asks if it's really the crowd or just the familiar faces that bother her. He says he doesn't mind eating in a crowded place. Shutong's boyfriend approaches the protagonist's table and throws $500 at him, telling him to leave so they can have the table. The protagonist wonders, does this guy really think this is cool? The guy throws more money, asking if the protagonist wants more to leave. Kiki, clutching her bag in anger, is visibly upset. The protagonist assumes she's stressed because of the guy, wondering where this man came from to ruin their perfect date. The guy pulls out more money, offering to make the protagonist leave, but a staff member steps in, offering to take the money and find another table for them. This only angers Shutong's boyfriend more, as he insists he wants that specific table. Suddenly, a woman hits him with her handbag, pretending it was an accident. Chen is confused about what's happening. The blonde guy seems to know the woman and calls her by name, Chokam. She angrily asks him what he's doing here, accusing him of cheating on her. The guy claims she's misunderstanding and insists he can't cheat on her because she's everything to him. Chokam curses him, while Ken's admirers look on. One of them grabs the blonde woman's hair, accusing her of seducing him. The blonde girl cries, saying that Ken invited her and lied about being single. The guy claims she's making up stories and slaps her across the face. She collapses, devastated. As he moves to strike her again, his hand is stopped by the protagonist, who asks, "You really enjoy making a fool of yourself, don't you?" The protagonist gains another 20 favorability points. Shutong remarks that the protagonist truly loves her. Favorability points keep adding up, 20 more, then another 20. The second target of the bootlicker system reaches over 95 points. The system congratulates Chen Yuan for successfully reversing the bootlicker situation, showing that Chen spent 50,000 on the second target and will receive 5,000 in return. Shutong has been converted into the protagonist's bootlicker, and he gains 20 strength points. Chen Yuan allocates 10 points to strength and 10 to fitness. He flexes his arm, and the blonde guy demands that Chen let go and grabs a bottle, threatening to kill him. Chen, annoyed, punches both the bottle and the guy, sending him flying. The guy falls to the ground, defeated, and Chen declares that relying on a woman isn't shameful, but hitting a woman while doing so is despicable. The blonde guy bites his lips, gripping a balloon popper tightly. The girl with Chen Yuan feels uneasy, urging him to finish things quickly. Shutong's boyfriend rushes at the protagonist, but thanks to his newly acquired points, Chen easily dodges, causing the blonde guy to hit his elbow and crash to the ground. Everyone in the food court grows tense. The blonde lies on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Chen walks away, hands in his pockets, with the young girl by his side. Shutong, now a bootlicker, clings to Chen's leg, pleading for forgiveness and a second chance. Cold and detached, Chen reminds her of the guy who carried her for 10 kilometers at 3 a.m. to take her to the hospital, who saved money for half a year to buy her a phone only for her to reject it because it wasn't the latest model, and who, despite knowing her superficial vanity, still believed she was a good person. He tells her that all those versions of him are gone. Outside, speaking with the president, Chen apologizes for the scene that unfolded. She says calling her president is too formal and suggests he call her Kiki. She assures him it didn't bother her and that she saw a new side of someone. Kiki finds Chen Yuan increasingly intriguing, imagining that he will continue to surprise her in many ways. Back at home, Shutong arrives drenched from the rain, crying. Her friend asks why she didn't use an umbrella, but Shutong is too distraught to answer casually. Her friend then asks if the drama was caused by the protagonist, mentioning that she heard Chen Yuan gave Zhao 10 million during her livestream. Shutong, shocked, asks, "What? More than 10 million? How did you hear that? Is it true?" Her friend confirms that Zhao's classmates have spread the word to everyone. Stunned, Shutong yells Chen Yuan's name for all to hear. Meanwhile, in his room, the protagonist's friends are playing Mobile Legends, asking how he managed to win 18 matches in a row. Chen hadn't anticipated that adding 20 attribute points would make him so skilled at online games. One friend with a stylish haircut suggests he could become a streamer, earning millions, and gaining a following. Chen is amazed at how much power these attribute points have given him. Glancing at himself, he wonders who else will benefit from his newfound abilities. Suddenly, his friends call for him to come out, and his phone rings. Chen Yuan wonders what kind of manipulation tactics will be used this time. He coldly answers, "Hello, Miss Gashuliao. Is there something you need to inform me about?" On the other end, Gashuliao is crying, saying she doesn't know what to do. The scene shows her in an abandoned room filled with Chen Yuan's previous purchases. She asks to borrow 500,000 from him. Gashu explains that her family was once well off, but now they are drowning in debt, unable to even cover the interest, and they just need to clear the debts. The protagonist only asks her two things, what she wants and for her to send the account details. Shocked, Gashu didn't expect him to actually send the money, but she quickly sends the account information. Chen transfers 5 million. She panics, saying he mistakenly sent 5 million. He responds casually that he must have added an extra zero and tells her to keep it. She screams in gratitude, and her favorability points skyrocket. Gashuliao thanks Chen and promises to pay him back when she can. Her favorability continues to rise, now reaching 94. Chen notices this and grumbles about how slow it is to fully win her over. He briefly considers confessing, but quickly dismisses the idea, knowing that revealing true feelings is a losing strategy. The next day, Chen is hanging out with his friends when someone calls his name from behind. He turns around to find Shutong, holding some pastries and asking if he wants to eat them in the classroom. His friend is astonished, wondering why Shutong brought breakfast for Chen Yuan. But then, another voice calls out, and Chen sees Gashuliao, who also brought breakfast, saying he must be tired of eating cafeteria food. A bootlicker showdown ensues. Before it can escalate further, another person calls Chen's name. His friends are exasperated. Another girl? Chen turns to see the president, who brought him ramen. The three girls exchange glares. The president, the second most beautiful girl on campus with a commanding presence, steps forward. Chen receives the ramen and asks how she knew he liked it with meat. She says it was an easy guess since they had a date. Chen Yuan isn't even trying to seduce anyone anymore, he's simply curious to see who can impress him more. The protagonist declares that the president wins easily since she understands his tastes. With a subtle jab at the other bootlickers, Kiki remarks that she wouldn't bring breakfast without knowing what he likes, adding that if someone doesn't pay attention to such details, he's not interested. Her words feel like a knockout punch to the other two girls. To top it off, Kiki gives Chen a gift as a token of her gratitude. Chen opens it, impressed. It's the newest iPhone. All his friends are stunned, staring in disbelief at the latest generation phone in his hands. One of the protagonist's friends remarks that watching the girls shower Chen Yuan with gifts feels worse than losing his own father. The girls discuss how generous one was for giving a gift worth 10,000. The protagonist tells Kiki that her gesture meant a lot to him too. She responds by saying that he has spent far more on her, and that it's the thought that counts since she doesn't have much money. In the following scene, Shutong is heartbroken, reflecting on how difficult it is to win back Chen Yuan. A few days later, the competition grows fiercer. Sulu calls Shutong to speak in private, but Shutong, still angry, blames her for everything that's happening. Sulu suggests that they form an alliance to take down Yuki. In the next chapter, the protagonist, holding his iPhone, praises Yuki for her gift. She glances back, thinking he said something, but Chen Yuan casually brushes it off. The protagonist has 40 favorability points with her. He muses that if it weren't for these pitiful 40 points, she would have already fallen for him. He is impressed by her behavior, feeling like she is changing him into a different person. Although he's far from reaching the full favorability points, she acts as if he's already won her over. Then his phone rings, and it's Xiaomi, the small-time TikTok streamer, sending him a message. She jokes about their previous failed meeting and suggests they meet, though she's hesitant about meeting people from her live stream. The protagonist is confused, wondering if this is just an excuse. He tells her to at least send some photos, reminding her that he isn't easy to win over. Suddenly, he receives another message from someone called Dragon King, inviting him to join a legendary group of wealthy otakus who make large donations. Chen Yuan joins, adopting the nickname Solitary Cigarette. Someone in the group expresses surprise that Dragon King invited the protagonist, calling him the largest donor they've ever seen. Chen Yuan introduces himself to the group, asking them to look out for him. One member comments that he looks like someone rich and must have some special talent. Another person offers him a business opportunity and asks if he'd like to get involved. Chen Yuan thinks, these rich kids want to test me? Fine, I'll play along. He replies, yes, I can help you. Let's discuss this privately. Another person chimes in, offering to sell him a villa. The protagonist asks where the villa is located, and the person sends the address. Chen Yuan realizes it's in the Ankou district, where properties go for millions. He plans to check out the villa in the coming days. Inside the mansion, a bald man asks if Chen Yuan is seriously considering buying the place, doubting that he's actually wealthy. Chen receives the address and wonders how much favorability he could gain if he gifted this villa to someone. The next day, he arrives at the villa with the president by his side. She asks why he brought her here so suddenly. Are you Brother Lu's cigarette? Asks the guard with an illustrated head. The protagonist recognizes the face and greets him with a hug. The guard is skeptical of Chen's wealth, but seeing him with the president lends him some credibility. He starts to wonder if Chen is part of a secret rich family, thinking this negotiation might be tough. The man introduces himself as Hong Yuanxiao, explaining that he has a few small businesses but is selling the villa due to financial issues. The bald man leads them inside, boasting that the villa spans over 500 square meters with land covering more than 2,000 square meters. The decor was done by top designers, and all the furniture is custom-made in Italy. He tells them to enjoy the view of the river and city, adding that if he weren't broke, he'd want to be buried there. Keki realizes that Chen Yuan is seriously considering buying the place, despite its high price. Chen takes a quick look around and remarks that he expected the house to be more impressive. He then asks how much it costs to live there. The bald man, clearly needing the sale, mentions that many people are interested and admits that negotiating will be tough. He says he wanted to sell the villa for about 50 million but asks if 60 million sounds fair. Chen Yuan lets out a hum, making the man wonder if the price is too high for him. The bald man starts thinking it's difficult to deceive someone from a noble family. The protagonist, however, responds by saying he didn't expect it to be so cheap. Everyone in the room is stunned by his reaction. The bald man regrets not asking for 70 or 80 million instead. The protagonist turns to Keki and asks if they should buy the house. Surprised, Keki says she doesn't mind if he buys it or not. Chen steps closer, whispering that he's buying the house for her. The bald man is shocked. He never expected Chen to purchase the villa for the president. Keki stands frozen in disbelief, saying that 60 million is far too much. She begins imagining wild scenarios, like Chen Yuan locking her in the basement and tying her up. She apologizes, saying she can't accept such a lavish gift. The protagonist takes her hand, asking her to hear him out. He explains that he has a limit on how many properties he can own, and he already has several houses. He thought it would be nice to transfer this one to her name, so she could have her own home. Keki imagines even crazier situations with him. Chen Yuan whispers, asking if she thinks relationships are important, telling her that everything he owns is also hers. Gaining another 10 favorability points, then another, and another, he reaches 90 points, just 5 more to go. The protagonist congratulates himself on his performance, thinking he deserves an Oscar for his acting skills. The blonde girl nudges the bald man, asking when something like that will happen to them. The Mosquito Airport guy responds that he doesn't have money for such extravagant gifts. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan swipes his card. He tells the man that he will transfer the money, and once the paperwork is finalized, they'll settle the rest. The man reassures the protagonist that everything will be taken care of in the next few days. Chen Yuan's plan is progressing smoothly, with the president's favorability score now at 90. He thinks that once he fully maxes out her favorability, the 70 million he spent will turn into a return of over 700,000. She looks at him, thinking that after everything that's happened, he's about to say something embarrassing. She starts daydreaming about their perfect wedding, debating between Milan or the Maldives as the venue. She wonders what the ring will look like and even starts thinking of baby names, worrying whether he'll forget her when he gets old. But before she can daydream further, they arrive at their destination. She steps out of the car and asks if Chen Yuan isn't getting out. He says no, he's off to play a game of League of Legends with a friend and waves goodbye. She waves back, feeling disappointed, having expected more than just a casual goodbye. Chen Yuan heads to an internet cafe, greeting his friends. They complain that he took too long, telling him they already started a match without him. They urge him to hurry and sign in, as they're losing. The protagonist notices Su Lu is also there and is surprised. She explains that her father owns several internet cafes, and this one was recently opened. She's there to help attract customers. She thanks him, mentioning that her family's debts have finally been paid off. Su Lu then tells him to stay put while she gets him a drink and an unlimited game card for the cafe. Chen Yuan tries to decline, but suddenly, an explosion happens behind him. 2 men appear, one looks like a character from a movie. He asks Su Lu if she's Lao Su's daughter and when her father plans to settle his debt. Su Lu, looking flustered, says that her father has already paid off the 5 million debt and asks what they want. The man responds that the 5 million was just the start, and there's still 15 million in interest. She calls it a scam and threatens to call the police. The thug grabs her wrist, telling her to be quiet and that if she doesn't pay the 15 million, they'll take her instead. He adds that after working for 1 or 2 years at his nightclub, she'll have paid off the debt. The protagonist intervenes, pulling her arm away, telling the thug to stop if he values his life. Su Lu starts to panic. The thug laughs and says the protagonist doesn't know what he's gotten himself into, then orders his men to kill him. Chaos ensues. Some thugs wield cake cutters, while others fight with their bare hands. The protagonist delivers a powerful kick to the thug's chin, impressing his friends, who comment that it looks like a cyclone kick. The scene shifts to the thugs fleeing, trying to avoid further punishment. A representative from Cassia warns that if they see the thugs again, there won't be any talking. With his favorability now at 95, Su Lu throws herself into the protagonist's arms. The system congratulates him on reaching 95 favorability points with another character and informs him that he spent 5.3 million, earning him a return of 530,000. A notification pops up, stating that Su Lu has now been converted into his loyal follower. Chen Yuan embraces her, but Shutong is watching from a distance. However, the protagonist is only focused on where to allocate the attribute points he just earned. The chest-only trainer arrives, visibly upset, accusing Su Lu of being a traitor for wanting to form an alliance and now hugging the protagonist. The protagonist watches the scene but quickly grows tired and asks the system to assign all his points to strength and agility. Everyone wonders where he's gone, as he seems to have vanished. In reality, Chen Yuan is casually strolling around the college campus, reflecting on how he has already earned points from both Shutong and Hshu Lu, but only President Zhao truly matters. Still, he notes that since there's only one president, he might need more girls. Someone approaches him, tapping his back, asking if he can move aside as the track team needs that space and it would be best if he didn't stay there. Chen Yuan acknowledges her boldness but finds her sincerity refreshing. He asks for her contact information, but someone else steps in, informing him that she's already in a relationship and advising him to leave if he doesn't want any trouble. Chen Yuan stares at the guy, trying to place where he's seen him before. Suddenly, he has a flashback, recalling that this thug had once beaten him up. He tells the thug to take a good look at himself before criticizing others and asks why he was chasing after Su Lu. Remembering everything, Chen Yuan thinks to himself, it's easy to find old enemies. The protagonist activates the system on the thug's girlfriend. The system reveals her details. Her name is He Jiaying, she's 19 years old, 1.69 meters tall, weighs 50 kilograms, and has an appearance rating of 8.2. Her current favorability score is -5. Given the difficulty level, the system grants extra attribute points. Chen Yuan celebrates, noting that he can now get 22 points. The jealous guy lines up for a race, with people around wondering who this newcomer is. As the race begins, the guy runs, thinking it's too easy and comparing the competition to ants. What he doesn't realize is that the protagonist is speeding past him like a flash, leaving only dust in his wake. Chen Yuan tells Lien to watch closely, saying that the protagonist will win easily in the sport the other guy has trained for his whole life. Furious, the guy asks if Chen Yuan is mocking him, but he's clueless as the protagonist laps him completely, leaving him stunned and confused at how it's even possible. The protagonist ridicules the guy, pointing out that he trained for 10 years, only to be defeated by someone who gained favorability points in just a week. The crowd erupts, amazed that in just 15 seconds, he's already on his 5th lap. Chen Yuan crosses the finish line with a smile. The most devoted girl in all of China is astonished that Lien lost. The announcer exclaims that something unbelievable is happening before their eyes, a new champion who will break all the current records. A muscular coach approaches the protagonist, commenting on Chen Yuan's exceptional abilities, and asks if he would like to join the track team, promising that with a bit more training, he could qualify for the national championship. The humiliated guy asks if the spot wasn't already his. The protagonist mocks Lien, questioning if it was really his spot, saying it isn't anymore. The last romantic girl in China imagines the protagonist as a professional runner, earning him 5 more favorability points. The loser walks over and asks if she was thinking about something else. She responds that no, she was just worried about him. Another 5 favorability points, and then another 5. Back in her room, Kiki wonders where she has been, then asks if she knew that the protagonist bought her a house. She is shocked and asks if he really bought a house for her. Her friend explains that she had been busy visiting the house with him, and it cost 60 million in Anku. Her friend is amazed at how lucky Kiki is, but calls her a bit naive. She picks up her phone and sees something stirring on the forums, calling Kiki to check it out. A rumor is spreading that Chen Yuan from Ruei University is a player, juggling multiple relationships at the same time. They exchange concerned glances. Chen Yuan wonders if he really is trash, claiming he was only spending money, and that the rumors are just slander. Meanwhile, 3 guys, snacking on cheese puffs, celebrate that they're about to ruin the protagonist's reputation. Another guy appears behind them, asking what they're doing. Startled, they explain that the protagonist has become too full of himself, and they want to teach him a lesson. The race loser also sees the news about Chen Yuan and wonders if he's the same guy from the race. Now that he knows the protagonist's name, he recalls beating him up in the past. He mentions that they went to the same high school, and that the protagonist was always a troublemaker, constantly pestering the girls. The 3 boys interrogate him, eager for more information to post and ruin the protagonist's reputation. Liang, the loser, declares that after winning that race, the protagonist thinks he's untouchable, but he's going to change everyone's opinion of him. He adds that even the coach won't want to help him anymore, calling Chen Yuan the university's trash. The news spreads, portraying him as the biggest disgrace at school, accusing him of using women and being involved in multiple relationships without their consent, even dragging down their grades. Shock spreads, as people who had admired him are stunned. The girls are in disbelief. In the president's office, a man grabs a student's phone and declares that the protagonist can't stay at the university. He promises to personally investigate Chen Yuan and have him expelled. In the next chapter, someone remarks that Chen Yuan is a unique individual, imagining that he can't bear to see a girl in distress without wanting to spend all his money to help her. Someone else intervenes, insulting Chen Yuan, calling him trash, and expressing their hatred for men who hurt women. By night, the protagonist transforms into a Black Knight, using his powerful fists to eliminate evil. A mysterious figure, devoted to protecting a city filled with desire and sin, is revealed to be none other than President Kiki. She claims that to her, the protagonist is a hero. The others question whether calling him a hero is an exaggeration and ask where she got that idea. Kiki says it's just her intuition. The guys wonder if they can trust her word, but someone reminds them she's the vice president of the student council, a bit eccentric, but trustworthy. The president, however, is skeptical, saying he wants more evidence, and orders them to question others. They go on to interview Su Tang. "Hello, we have a few questions about your classmate, Chen Yuan," says the interviewer. Su Tang responds that Chen Yuan is a great person, but she wasn't enough for him. She admits she was foolish and greedy, acknowledging that she wronged the protagonist, and now wants him to take her back, bursting into tears. A policeman hands her a tissue to dry her eyes. He asks if, despite everything, Chen Yuan still treats her kindly. The president, observing her distress, coldly remarks that she deserves what's happening to her, that she isn't worthy of his love, and that Chen Yuan did nothing wrong. Furious and jealous, the president storms out of the room, lighting a cigarette to calm his nerves. He starts to question if he was wrong, realizing that people are just trying to ruin the protagonist's reputation. Looking down from his office window, he sees two people approaching, carrying a banner. It's Xu Liao and her father. The president introduces himself and asks why they are there. Xu Liao explains that she is from the arts department and wanted to make a banner for Chen Yuan. Her father adds that the protagonist protected his daughter recently and helped their family greatly. The president is both impressed and increasingly jealous of Chen Yuan. With that, he says goodbye, realizing he may have blamed the wrong person. He decides to check the posts again, noticing a comment from a girl saying that if Chen Yuan is trash, then she's ready to throw herself into the dumpster. The girls are all sharing their admiration as the protagonist runs. Several girls gush about how their hearts race whenever they see him. The president is taken aback, realizing that only the women are defending him, and starts to think that all of this is happening simply because Chen Yuan stands out too much. The president declares that he understands Chen Yuan and will ensure justice is served, stating that he won't tolerate any accusations or complaints against him. He gathers all the students to address the rumors circulating about Chen Yuan on the school forum. He announces that a thorough investigation was conducted, and confirms that the protagonist is innocent, with all the rumors being nothing but slander. The president is there to clear Chen Yuan's name. He informs everyone that Chen Yuan has always been willing to help others, protecting many people without seeking recognition, which is why he kept his good deeds a secret. The president praises Chen Yuan, almost tearing up as he presents him with an award for positively contributing to society, urging all students to learn from his example. Chen Yuan, confused, wonders what's going on and why he's receiving this award, especially if it's just for protecting someone. Ling is furious, cursing the president, since the protagonist's reputation was supposed to be ruined. Ling believes he should be in Chen Yuan's position. He then notices his girlfriend complimenting the protagonist, and his jealousy grows as her favorability towards Chen Yuan increases. Another 10 points, another 10 points. As the meeting concludes and everyone starts to leave, she asks Ling if he's gone mad or feeling unwell, and why he's so jealous of the protagonist. She tells him that her admiration for Chen Yuan is genuine, as he has helped so many people without seeking fame or wealth. She reminds him of how Chen Yuan won the race against Liang but chose not to join the track team, which she believes is a sign of a truly remarkable person. Ling grabs her wrist forcefully, and she demands that he let go, telling him he's hurting her. Nearby, Liang starts boasting about his Tesla and how he has much more than the protagonist. But as they speak, the protagonist calls a bald man to pick him up. The protagonist specifically asks not to be picked up in an expensive car, wanting to maintain a low profile. The bald man arrives in a new luxury car, apologizing and explaining that he was on time but had come in that vehicle. The protagonist gets upset, reminding him to pay attention and not use flashy cars. The bald man acknowledges his mistake, and with that, the protagonist leaves. Liang's girlfriend, fed up with the situation, tells him she wants to break up. He says it's impossible, but she walks away, leaving him devastated. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan transfers some money to the bald man, who thanks him. The protagonist says that now that things are settled, he'll head back to school. The bald man offers a ride again, but Chen Yuan declines, explaining that the car draws too much attention. The bald man agrees and just advises the protagonist to be careful. As he walks through the city, Chen Yuan thinks about President Zhao, realizing she needs just a little more to complete the system and gain the 25 attribute points. He wonders if the chubby guy has anything to sell again. Checking the group chat, he sees people commenting that he managed to buy the house with just a bit of negotiation. One person remarks that Chen Yuan must have a lot of money. The protagonist tells them to calm down, explaining that he only bought the house to help a friend. The group is shocked when Chen Yuan suddenly appears, and everyone greets him with admiration. One of the guys with a car photo asks if Chen Yuan is interested in buying a luxury car, mentioning that he knows some dealers. Another person informs him that the Zhang family has a small business dealing with imported cars and introduces him to the protagonist. Looking at the business card, Chen Yuan notices it says Zhang Group. He imagines that the Zhang family must have a massive industry, and the guy must be a second-generation rich kid. Chen Yuan compliments Zhang, saying that managing such a large car business at his age is impressive. Zhang responds that he thought Chen Yuan was older, considering that he already purchased a house. They chat for a bit, and from a distance, two girls speculate about who Chen Yuan might be, assuming he's the son of a wealthy family given that manager Zhang is treating him with such respect. However, they dismiss any chance of getting to know him. Zhang, without bragging, mentions that his store has the largest collection of luxury cars in the city and offers Chen Yuan any car he desires. The protagonist, thinking about a legendary car, asks for a Bugatti Chiron. Zhang, surprised, says there are very few units available and assumes Chen Yuan is joking. The protagonist, noticing the lack of availability, then asks if they have a Lamborghini Veneno. Zhang regretfully says they don't. Chen Yuan moves on to ask if they have a Pagani Huayra, to which Zhang again replies that they do not. At this point, the salesperson is visibly nervous, sweating profusely, as Chen Yuan seems to be testing the limits of their inventory. The manager explains that the cars they have for sale range between 2 and 8 million, and the vehicles the protagonist is asking for are a bit beyond that price range. The protagonist, clearly disappointed, remarks that he expected more from Zhang, who had claimed to have luxury cars. Zhang, thinking the protagonist must be joking, given that he bought a house in that price range, realizes he's serious about wanting a car of similar value. The manager admits they don't have the cars Chen Yuan is asking for but suggests a Ferrari LaFerrari, one of Ferrari's rarest models. He mentions that it comes with a V12 engine, producing 800 horsepower, a dual transmission, and can accelerate from 0 to 100 km per hour in under 3 seconds, priced at 22 million. He asks for Chen Yuan's opinion on the car. Chen Yuan responds that Ferraris aren't considered particularly expensive, but not cheap either, and that it might make the perfect gift for President Zhao. The protagonist declares that if the price is above 20 million, then the deal is done. He praises Zhang for his effort and expresses his eagerness to purchase the car right away. He asks if the vehicle can be delivered to Riverside Villa, Community No. 1. Nervously sweating, the manager assures him it can be arranged. Just then, Chen Yuan receives a call from Lu Wenji, shouting in his ear. In the next chapter, one of Chen Yuan's friends opens up about how his girlfriend, Zhou Jia, told him she was getting her nails done with a friend. Growing suspicious after she had been out for a long time, he went to check on her, especially since it had started raining, and she hadn't taken an umbrella. In a chivalrous act, he brought her an umbrella, only to discover her cheating on him in the rain. Heartbroken, he tells Chen Yuan that his heart won't stop hurting, as they had been in a relationship for 3 years and he was already planning their wedding. Chen Yuan advises him to take it easy, mentioning that he's already drunk 8 bottles of alcohol and should take a break. But the heartbroken guy desperately asks how to win her back. The protagonist firmly tells him to keep his head straight, reminding him that the mistake was hers, not his. Loudly, Chen Yuan adds that his friend is starting to look like a bootlicker. His friend collapses to the floor, asking how Chen Yuan can be so composed and why he can't accept that she betrayed him. Now furious, the protagonist tells him he needs to teach her a lesson and grabs his phone. His friend asks who he's calling and what his plan is. Chen Yuan reassures him, saying he'll take care of everything and promises that his ex-girlfriend will soon be begging for forgiveness. Chen Yuan calls the dealership manager, who answers immediately. The protagonist requests to borrow a few cars, not just any cars, but ones worth over 20 million, and mentions that he'll need some trusted friends to drive them tomorrow. The dealership manager agrees without hesitation, saying he'll arrange everything. Still confused, Chen Yuan's friend watches as the protagonist makes another call, this time to Su Liao. His friend notices that with a single call, a beautiful girl arrives, and he asks where the old Chen Yuan, the one who used to grovel to girls, has gone, now that it seems they are the ones flocking to him. Introducing his friend, the protagonist says, "Hey, Su Liao, this is my brother Wenji." Su Liao, initially confused, wonders if Chen Yuan just called her to introduce a friend. After thinking it over, she imagines he might want her to meet his close friends. However, the protagonist quickly clarifies that it's not about that and that he just needs her help for a little prank. The next day, Chen Yuan's friend shows up looking like a gangster. Su Liao clings to his arm, saying he scared her when the car he bought for her almost hit someone. Nervously, the friend stammers that if she had hit someone, it wouldn't have been a big deal, they could just buy another car. Wenji's ex-girlfriend watches in astonishment, unable to believe how much he has transformed, looking like a second-generation rich kid. She sarcastically asks if Wenji came just to show off. He responds nervously, implying that someone was barking. Angrily, his ex-girlfriend demands to know what he's doing, reminding him that she knows his family. She admits she made a mistake but accuses him of being shameless for acting like that. In the car, another friend comments that the woman seems to have understood what's happening. The protagonist says, the brothers are about to step onto the stage, and the show is about to begin. Soon after, several guys pull up in Ferraris. A white-haired guy steps out and approaches Wenji, asking if everything's alright and if Wenji recognizes him. Addressing Wenji's ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, the white-haired man says, "Your name is Makai, right? Your family owns a mine?" This guy is always lying, pretending to have wealth to impress girls. And you thought he was a second-generation rich kid? Time to wake up, man. Makai, caught off guard, begs the white-haired guy to let him go. The white-haired guy criticizes these types of tactics, saying they never change, as these men only manage to deceive naive girls. He adds that Wenji's ex-girlfriend is already lost. Enraged by being deceived, the girl runs after Makai. Wenji watches, telling everyone to leave. His ex clings to his leg, begging him not to leave her behind. She confesses that it's not just about liking luxury, but her fear of poverty. She pleads for another chance. Wenji tells her not to call him by that name, and that this will be the last time they ever see each other. He warns her never to contact him again. As Makai tries to escape, he bumps into Chen Yuan. The protagonist, blocking his way, asks if he's planning to flee but says he can only leave after taking 100 slaps. At the bar, everyone who drove the Ferraris is celebrating finally meeting the renowned Mr. Yuan. The protagonist expresses his gratitude, thanking everyone for their support. The guys reassure Lu Cigarette, saying it's all good since he's a friend of Chef Zhang, and there's no need for formalities. The white-haired guy asks if he's not the person from the streaming platform news and mentions he has a request. The protagonist asks what favor he needs. The guys exchange glances. The white-haired man explains that he has a favorite streamer but is low on money and asks if Chen Yuan could offer some help. The protagonist suspects the group is testing how much wealth he truly has. The dealership guy tells the protagonist not to worry, stating it was all a joke, and jokingly tells the white-haired guy that if he wants to woo a girl, he should handle it himself. Lu Cigarette slams his glass on the table, and the group wonders if he didn't appreciate the joke. The protagonist says the joke was too tame, as it was merely about sending gifts. He excuses himself to go to the bathroom, leaving his phone on the table, telling the white-haired guy he can spend as much as he likes. The guy takes the phone, feeling dignified and surprised that the protagonist trusts him enough to let a stranger spend his money freely. Chen Yuan is aware that there's no money in the account to cover the drinks but knows the white-haired guy can send as many virtual gifts as he wants. As the protagonist heads to the restroom, the guy looks around, thinking about a dragon against a chick and muttering to himself. Upon returning from the bathroom, Chen Yuan notices everyone gathered around, curious about what's going on. "My God, 1004, 1006, damn man," the crowd around the table exclaims. The protagonist approaches, asking what's causing all the excitement. Nervous, the white-haired guy hands the phone back. The protagonist mocks him, calling him weak for only spending 20 million while he was in the bathroom. The crowd goes wild, wondering if the protagonist has more money than a bank. Chen Yuan is frustrated, pointing out that the guy barely spent 13 million, not even close to 20 million, and declares that he'll spend 60 million next time. The white-haired guy grabs his hand, pleading with him to stop, saying the excessive spending is making everyone uncomfortable. The dealership guy arrives and tells the white-haired guy that he couldn't outdo the protagonist and proposes a toast to Chief Yuan. He starts the toast, declaring, "From now on, I follow your leadership, Honorable Chief Yuan." Onlookers wonder who the man at the center of attention is. They note that while the white-haired guy is quite wealthy, he seems to be aligning himself with the protagonist. Chen Yuan's phone rings. He glances at it and bids farewell to the group. One of the guys, Blue Gear, realizes what's happening and accuses the protagonist of trying to sneak away to avoid paying the bill. However, another guy quickly dismisses this, pointing out that they just witnessed him spend a fortune. Blue Gear agrees. The message is from a streamer, letting Chen Yuan know she's in town and eager to meet him. The protagonist replies, saying he's free tomorrow and sends her a few kisses. Chen Yuan reflects, thinking that, after a long time, he's finally going to reap the rewards of his generosity. The next day, the streamer arrives, thinking it will be just a date, confident that her charm will win him over. The next chapter starts with a long message from Chutan, saying she wants to start over, imagining them traveling the world together, tasting all kinds of food. But when she woke up, she realized she was alone and begged for his forgiveness. The protagonist immediately blocks and deletes her contact, focusing instead on his date with the streamer. The streamer asks what he was doing, but Chen Yuan brushes it off, saying it was nothing important and asks what she was talking about. She recalls her boss scolding her, saying that Chen Yuan spends more in a day than all her fans combined and that she must do whatever it takes, even if it means stripping and putting him to sleep, to capture him. Despite her efforts, the streamer feels discouraged as the protagonist seems indifferent to her charms. She tries to seduce him, asking how he became so wealthy at such a young age. However, a system message notifies her that her favorability is too high to establish a connection. The protagonist realizes he needs to lower her favorability first and begins doing unpleasant things, like putting his feet on the table, to achieve this. He tells her he's just an unemployed guy who got lucky. Outraged, she asks how he can be jobless yet still have so much money to spend. The protagonist responds that he's just living off his father's money, but they're going bankrupt and owe millions to the bank. He admits he arranged the meeting to see if he could get back some of the money he had gifted her because he spent too much. Disgusted, she watches as the protagonist picks his nose and doesn't wash his hands afterward. Despite this, his plan is working as her favorability points drop by 20. Unable to bear it any longer, she asks why he invited her out if he's broke, accusing him of being dishonorable for asking for gifts back. Lose 20, lose 20, lose 20, the system flashes as her favorability continues to plummet. She finally says she must have been crazy to agree to meet a loser like him. The streamer calls someone, telling them she met the protagonist and that he's bothering her, thinking he might be a stalker. The protagonist, disappointed, labels her as shameless for changing her attitude so quickly. Suddenly, a man bursts through the door, demanding to know who's bothering his woman. She runs to him, saying she was scared to death by the pervert Chen Yuan. Ignoring her, the man walks toward the protagonist and greets him respectfully, "Brother Yuan, you're here too." The man is impressed to meet Chen Yuan, saying it's an honor. The streamer is left confused, not understanding why the man is being so polite to Chen Yuan. It turns out that the man is one of the richest second-generation heirs, owning several industries in the region. He slams the table, calling her foolish for bothering one of the most important men, and for assuming he was poor. The streamer realizes she made a huge mistake, thinking the protagonist was testing her sincerity. She quickly tries to apologize and beg for his forgiveness, realizing she messed up big time. With that, the system connects with her. The protagonist looks at her and says it's fine, she's just a young, inexperienced girl. She replies that she understands and confirms he truly is her favorite. Plus 10, plus 10, plus 10 favorability points. Chen Yuan ponders whether this is how people make a living, by seducing others, and reflects that as long as they can get money, favorability will increase. He decides he won't let her off that easily. The guy from the date slams the table, expressing frustration that he spent a lot of money to boost her fame, only for her to treat one of his best friends so poorly. He invites the protagonist to an exclusive event in his honor. Chen Yuan agrees, saying he'll attend as a gesture of respect for their friendship. As Chen Yuan gets into the car, the little streamer insists on coming along. In the car, she hugs him and asks if he's angry at her, acknowledging that she understands she was wrong. The protagonist takes out his phone and opens the streaming platform, telling her it's okay and she's worrying too much. He starts a live stream of a well-mannered girl, encouraging viewers to follow her. The little streamer watches in awe as he makes large donations. The streamer on the live feed is overwhelmed by the gifts, unable to comprehend the amount of money she just received, even fainting from the shock. The little streamer is astonished at how easily the protagonist spends his money. She remarks that all that money should be for her and insists that he must be joking. Plus 30 favorability points. The girl on the stream flirts, saying she wishes his fingers were touching her instead of the screen, and Chen Yuan earns another plus 30 favorability points. Watching this, he remarks that she's crazy for enjoying him humiliating her by giving money to others. Arriving at the event, the guy welcomes Chen Yuan, informing him that they're at the city's most prestigious private restaurant, accessible only through a special membership invitation. He mentions that the restaurant boasts 3 key features. The protagonist guesses that one is impressive food and the second is a unique atmosphere, but he can't figure out the third. The guy is impressed that Chen Yuan guessed 2 and hints that he would never guess the last one. Chen Yuan sees the president playing an instrument, and the guy reveals that the third feature is the chef's daughter, Zhao Yuqi. As she stands up, they exchange puzzled glances. She notices the little streamer clinging to Chen Yuan's arm, and the protagonist loses 5 favorability points as Zhao Yuqi breaks her instrument, saddened and tearful. The protagonist watches her run away, frustrated that he was so close to a breakthrough. He wonders if he can turn the situation around and fix everything in one go. He pushes her against the wall, and she angrily calls him a fool for playing with her emotions. Chen Yuan thinks he can't afford to miss this opportunity and asks if she's seen a particular movie. Annoyed, she responds that she's tired of him, and now he's asking about movies? Chen Yuan lights a cigarette and explains that he's the son of a tycoon, asking if she knows he has an extraordinary background and wonders why he lives such a simple life. He reveals that there's a secret family rule: when someone in his family turns 18, they must spend 10 billion in a month to receive a fortune of 50 billion. The protagonist explains that his focus is to spend that money, saying he's invested in various projects, activities, donations, and environmental initiatives. He adds that the streamer he donated to was part of this mission to spend the money. He assures her that this situation was just a misunderstanding and confides that everything he's told her is a secret known only to her, asking her to keep it confidential. Chen Yuan tells her it's a secret he's carried for a long time, then bids her farewell. Kiki, overwhelmed, apologizes for the trouble she's caused him and finds it hard to see how he will inherit the fortune. She embraces him, admitting that she isn't ready to say goodbye, realizing it was a mistake to think that way about him. As she hugs him, believing he truly cares for her because he shared a family secret, plus 20 favorability points are gained. On the way back, Kiki apologizes for getting upset, saying it wasn't intentional and reassuring him that Chen Yuan is her friend too. She offers to pay his bill. The guy is impressed, noting how quickly Chen Yuan managed to reconcile with the president. However, the little streamer is not pleased. She's furious, grumbling that Kiki thinks she's all that, but insists she's the one who will win Chen Yuan's heart. At the table, the little streamer confronts Chen Yuan, asking about his relationship with the president. But before he can answer, the president interjects, pointing out that the protagonist hasn't revealed his real name yet. She suggests the little streamer start calling him brother, since he's likely younger than her. The guy observes that the president is controlling the interaction. The little streamer, holding back her frustration, just stares at her. Chen Yuan, sensing the tension, tells them both to stop and eat quickly because he's hungry. The two women glare at each other, while the guy remarks that Yuan doesn't seem to care about anything, labeling him as very mysterious. One's a famous streamer on the shark platform, a master at reaping wealth, while the other is a renowned, talented woman with aspirations that reach the sky. The guy comments that Chen Yuan is in the enviable position of choosing between these two for his future. He goes on to say that Chen Yuan has moved beyond the simple art of seduction and could now be considered a succubus for girls. Initially, the guy was impressed by Chen Yuan's wealth, but now he says he'll follow him as a spiritual idol until the day he dies. Back at home, Chen Yuan reflects on how expensive the restaurant was, thanking Kiki for paying as part of her apology. He checks his strategy, noting that both Chutong and Haxalil are still his devoted followers. He sees the president's favorability at 91 and the little streamer's at 92. Looking at these high favorability points, he wonders if it's time to make a bold move. He notices someone behind the president and asks if it's Liang's girlfriend, realizing she has a favorability score of 76. He recalls it was only 25 after their race, and wonders if his charm has significantly improved. Suddenly, the guys rush in, saying there's someone confessing his love to a girl. The protagonist remarks that finding genuine love is rare these days. Outside, a crowd gathers around a heart made of candles, where a man is playing guitar, declaring his love. He confesses that he still loves her, admits he was wrong, and promises to never be violent again, asking her to remember their past and give him another chance. The most loyal girl in China is standing there, confused. Chen Yuan arrives, asking what's happening, just as the cruelest woman strikes again. She slaps the bouquet of roses out of the guy's hands and runs off. Liang, still hopeful, calls after her, saying she doesn't need to run because her true love is standing right there. The girl approaches Chen Yuan and asks if his name is Chen Yuan, saying she's finally found him and begs him to add her. The crowd erupts, bewildered as to why she's moving on to another guy. Liang stands there, disappointed. Chen Yuan, noticing Liang's downcast expression, asks if the situation is hard to understand. Liang admits he's upset and wonders aloud if it's time to close the coffin lid. Chen Yuan tells him that he's always admired his looks and athletic talent, which won him the affection of so many girls, but now that he's lost one, he's panicking. He points out that Liang's obsession with victory made him ignore his girlfriend's feelings, gradually driving her away, and now he's playing the victim. Liang admits that Chen Yuan is right, taking responsibility for the situation. Several girls in the crowd are watching the scene unfold, gossiping about the situation. They agree that if Liang was aggressive or treated the girl poorly, there's nothing left to fix. The girl stares at Chen Yuan, sensing that he truly understands her, and her favorability score jumps to 91. Despite doing nothing but glancing her way a few times, she's already fallen for him. Meanwhile, the president's friend is scheming, knowing she needs to warn Kiki that Chen Yuan isn't only interested in her. Desperately, she barges into Kiki's room, telling her that Chen Yuan is cheating on her and she should break things off immediately. Kiki insisted that it was impossible because Chen Yuan was a prince who would never betray her. Her friend was about to mention that he was downstairs talking about emotions with another girl, but Kiki cut her off, saying it didn't matter if others confessed to him. However, Xiaofei pointed at the phone and asked how she felt about him spending money on another woman. Again, Kiki brushed it off, saying he had already told her and that he had plenty of money. She patted her friend's head, saying that trust was the most important thing in a relationship and that he was always honest with her. Her poor friend was heartbroken, feeling that her once intelligent companion had become completely delusional. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan was fighting off sleep. His friend was annoyed, asking who gets sleepy in the middle of a mystery game. In front of him were two girls, gazing at him with hearts in their eyes, telling him to go back to sleep because he looked so handsome even while unconscious, which felt somewhat risky. His friend explained that it was only because of his looks that they were there, and he needed to help him out. But Chen Yuan wanted to know why she was there as well. Clearly, someone was eager to get back at him. His friend expressed concern, saying he had heard she had been visiting the hospital frequently, and Chen Yuan wondered if things had really gone that far. Reflecting on the first time he faced legendary rejection, he thought maybe she genuinely wanted to apologize, but it was her fault for acting that way. Was he being too harsh? He found himself in a dilemma. The girls wanted to know if he was the infamous Lu Cigarette from the internet, especially since he used the same name on WhatsApp. Just as he started to speak, Shutong perked up, listening closely. Suddenly, a voice in the room declared that if he were truly that guy, he would let them use his head as a bowling ball. A man in a blue suit told him to stop comparing himself to that wealthy guy. Did no one recognize this man? The same man approached Shutong and introduced himself as Lin Shutong, asking for her contact information. She seemed flustered and shy. Clearly, she wasn't handling the situation well. It occurred to Chen Yuan that this man had made his life miserable during high school by using his family's influence, but he was willing to let it go since he didn't want people to know about his wealth. However, looking at Shutong, he thought it was time to test her. Standing next to Lin Shutong, he introduced him to everyone, stating that he was a high-class guy with lots of money and thriving businesses. He then explained that his recent financial gains were simply due to the demolition of his family's house, nothing more. Shutong was stunned to realize that Chen Yuan wasn't the famous Lu Cigarette. On one side was a wealthy guy with many businesses, and on the other, a poor man who liked her a little. Her favorability toward Chen Yuan dropped, and her admiration system crashed by 15 points. But this made the protagonist smile as Shutong ran to add Lin Shutong. She had a sly look on her face, clearly thinking that even a fool knew who the better option was. Lin Shutong laughed, telling Chen Yuan that it was amusing. The girl he introduced had just added him. He leaned in and whispered to Chen Yuan that he had been humiliated middle school style and would continue to be. Did anyone notice something off? As Lin Shutong left, he announced he would cover the bill for everyone. Chen Yuan started laughing maniacally, leaving everyone wondering what was happening. He reassured them it was nothing, that he had just come to a realization. He had given Shutong the best opportunity, and yet she showed her true colors again. From that moment, he decided he would have no more sympathy. She didn't deserve it. As he was leaving, Lin Shutong asked if he was already heading out, adding that tomorrow there would be a middle school reunion. Chen Yuan considered it and told him that if it was just middle school people, he would definitely attend at a fancy restaurant in room 888. The reunion was in full swing, and everyone was happy, celebrating each other's successes, especially Lin Shutong's. In the midst of the crowd, Chen Yuan felt invisible. He thought Lin Shutong never missed a chance to show off. Suddenly, the door opened, and a girl entered with great respect. She apologized, explaining that her taxi took longer than expected. Chen Yuan recognized her as Xiao Rui, the moonlight that brightened his high school years. She was mysterious and graceful, like an unsolvable puzzle. Suddenly, the poet in him emerged. He smiled slightly and approached her, asking if they could exchange contacts. Lin Shutong grew angry, warning that he would regret this. Rui felt like she had seen him somewhere before and agreed to exchange contacts. With that, a new connection was formed, and her appearance score was a solid 9.2. Someone from the table shouted that Chen Yuan had never been special, so why was he acting so bold? One of the girls accused him of pretending to be rich, calling it shameful, and warned everyone that Chen Yuan associated with second-generation wealthy kids who harmed many women. One of Chen Yuan's friends chimed in, saying she had no idea what she was talking about. She claimed that Chen Yuan humiliated her by involving her ex-boyfriend, who delivered the car and caused her distress. Crying, she insisted that Chen Yuan only asked for Rui's number to sell it to his friends. Rui looked on, and her opinion of Chen Yuan began to drop because of this. Li Yuntao seized the opportunity, sarcastically asking Chen Yuan if he was so poor that he needed to rely on others and even offered him a job. Seeing the two of them insulting him at the same time, Chen Yuan thought they were plotting together. But if they were showing their true colors, he had to crush them. He sent a message to Hao Qian, telling him to come to the restaurant with a Ferrari. A little while later, everyone started heading downstairs to leave. Li Yuntao was confident that Chen Yuan and his friend would never show their faces there again. He asked Rui if she wanted a ride home, but she declined. Just then, an attendant approached Li Yuntao, asking him to move his car. Irritated, Li Yuntao questioned why he had to move it from the restaurant parking lot. The attendant explained that after 9 p.m., the lot was reserved for VIPs only. Li Yuntao scoffed, wondering who this so-called VIP could be. Sitting in his car, he was stunned to see a Ferrari he had only ever seen in showcases, worth over 20 million. Then, he saw Zhang Haoqian stepping out of the car and recognized him, starting to sweat with embarrassment because he had heard how important Haoqian was. But then Chen Yuan greeted Haoqian, who smiled and thanked him for bringing his car. Haoqian responded, "It's always good to help the boss." Li Yuntao was in disbelief. Was this car actually Chen Yuan's? People around started to question if Chen Yuan was really that wealthy, and the girls quickly realized that the other girl had lied, claiming Chen Yuan relied on others. Rui immediately understood that the girl and Li Yuntao had been trying to tarnish Chen Yuan's reputation. Despite the insults, Chen Yuan hadn't even bothered to defend himself. Rui found this intriguing, and her opinion of him rose by 20 points. Seeing her reaction, Chen Yuan smiled and asked if he could have the honor of taking her home. She agreed. The entire class was now swooning over Chen Yuan, while his friends took the chance to mock Li Yuntao, who was left disgraced. As they drove, Rui felt a bit uneasy, thinking maybe she had been too quick to get into the car. Chen Yuan noticed the pendant on her bag and commented that it was from Daiko Tamen. She was impressed that he recognized it. It was a character from a Chinese cartoon. He told her that he loved watching that series and its transformations, and she shyly admitted she had always liked it too. She glanced at him, feeling slightly embarrassed but smiling. Chen Yuan thought she was very cute, wondering if her cold demeanor was just a way to protect herself. Looking at her beautiful face made him feel an overwhelming urge to protect her. He confessed that he was feeling love for the first time in his life. When they reached her house, he made a small gesture, saying it was really nice meeting her, and she returned the gesture, thanking him for bringing her home. They stood there like two fools, laughing. As he left, she remarked that he was interesting, different from the other rich guys. He didn't try to control her and just seemed to enjoy her company. After she entered her house, her mother immediately scolded her, asking if she went on the blind date her mother had arranged. Rui's mother reminded her that her father's business was at a critical point, and they had no choice. Rui, crying, insisted she wouldn't marry just to help the company, saying her feelings mattered. But her mother coldly responded that it was her duty, as everything she had was provided by them, and if her father's company went bankrupt, they would be ruined. She added that the boy from the Han family might not seem appealing, but their situation was more important than her feelings. Rui, crying, said she understood, a tear falling onto the little doll in her hands. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan was mingling with a group of millionaires when the guy with the Ferrari mentioned he had some shocking news. Chen Yuan, curious, listened and found out that Rui was being pressured into marrying a chubby guy with terrible hair because of her family's financial crisis. Chen Yuan started to wonder if he had gotten involved in this mess by mistake. But remembering Rui, he questioned whether she would really go through with the marriage. Ever since high school, he hadn't been able to take his eyes off her. No, he wouldn't let this happen. This time, he would take action and not let life pass him by. A girl with glasses stopped Chen Yuan, asking if it was really him. She introduced herself as Shen Shuyu and asked if he wanted to become an internet celebrity. Chen Yuan glanced at the car and apologized, saying he wasn't interested. Shen Shuyu, noticing how quickly he declined, assumed he must have already received offers from other companies. Trying to take a different approach, she pulled out 3 bags filled with promotional materials and began talking about how her company was massive and offered extremely competitive pay. She even mentioned that their platform was home to the famous loose cigarette. She warned Chen Yuan that if he didn't sign with them, he'd better watch out for the cigarette guy's wrath. Chen Yuan was furious. The clueless girl didn't even realize he was the loose cigarette she kept talking about and was wasting his time. She stood there in front of him, while he wondered if she actually believed he wouldn't take action. So, he picked up his phone, thinking that if he wasn't going to do anything, someone else would. He reached out to the group of wealthy kids, dropping her name and company, asking if anyone could help deal with her. As she continued to persist, her boss suddenly called, ordering her to return to the office immediately, or she'd lose her job. Confused, she told her boss she hadn't done anything wrong. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan was still fuming, knowing that Rui was being targeted by his rival group. In the car, Rui's mother tried to console her, saying it was just a meeting and there was no need to be upset. She reminded her that this could help with the financial crisis they were facing. Just then, Rui received a message from Chen Yuan asking where she was. When she mentioned the restaurant, he replied that he would come to help. Rui wondered if Chen Yuan had already found out about the blind date. If she were to compare the repulsive Han guy with Chen Yuan, it was clear who was more attractive. Her father, breaking the silence, told her that he had never asked for anything before, and hoped she would consider their situation. Rui remained quiet but nodded in understanding. The car pulled up to an extravagant restaurant, and an attendant came to guide them inside. The Han family's representative was already drooling, talking about how soon she would be property of the Han family. Noticing a briefcase full of documents, Rui found it strange that they were bringing so many papers to what was supposed to be a blind date. As they entered the room, the father of the Han family greeted them, standing next to his son, Pineapple Head, who was already leering at her. Rui immediately noticed the pile of documents on the table. This was not a date, it was a business deal. She realized her father had planned something much worse. She sent a message to Chen Yuan, telling him she was in room 305. Meanwhile, Pineapple Head approached, eagerly talking about their relationship and promising her that her family's business would thrive with his support. Rui awkwardly pulled her hand away, saying thanks. But he put his hand on her back, squeezing it as he told her not to be so formal, reminding her that they'd soon be family. Angrily, she slapped his hand away, demanding to know who said they would be family and telling him to keep his hands off her. Her father scolded her, saying she was being disrespectful, and Rui was left in tears, unable to believe what was happening. Her father turned to Han Sanchu, Pineapple Head's father, and explained that Rui was young and didn't know what was best for her. He suggested they proceed with reviewing the contract. A man began explaining the deal. Han Sanchu's company would buy 20% of her father's business for 100 million, but only if she married Pineapple Head. Even worse, the funds would be locked in stocks controlled by the Han family and wouldn't be accessible until she bore a child with Pineapple Head. Rui, horrified, grabbed the document and asked if they were seriously talking about having a child as part of the agreement. She turned to her father, asking through tears if he had truly brought her here to sell her like this. Her mother tried to calm her down, but Rui refused, crying and asking why their failures had to ruin her life. She declared that she knew Pineapple Head was addicted to alcohol, gambling, and worse. She would never marry him. At this point, her father, enraged, slapped her across the face, leaving her in shock with a red mark on her cheek. It was like something out of a telenovela. Her father yelled that he had spoiled her too much, and now she was selfish, only thinking of herself. Rui was confused by his words, struggling to understand how she was being selfish. Her mother chimed in, saying she needed to be more understanding. If she didn't agree to this, the entire family would collapse. Rui argued that they could start over together, rebuild everything, but her mother fell to her knees, begging her daughter to save the family. Everyone in the room was stunned by the scene. Rui, shocked, told her mother to get up, asking her what she was doing. But her mother refused, saying she wouldn't stand up unless Rui agreed to the marriage. Rui was lost, not knowing what to do. Pineapple Head reassured her that he would make her life perfect, promising her the moon and stars. In that moment, Rui felt defeated, realizing that this was her fate. Being born into a wealthy family came with the cost of sacrificing parts of her life. Without showing any emotion, she told her mother she would agree, and her mother could get up. Instantly, her mother's tears vanished, as fake as promises to stop browsing questionable sites. She stood up, congratulating her daughter as though nothing had happened. Sanchu says that now that she has agreed, they should sign the contracts immediately. The man starts pulling the documents out of the briefcase while Sanchu mentions that as soon as the marriage happens, their company will skyrocket. Meanwhile, Pineapple Head is licking his lips, still angry that she initially refused, already imagining the fun he'll have with her. The room falls silent, and Ruiyu doesn't even sit down. Suddenly, the door flies open with a loud kick, and Chen Yuan enters. Ruiyu is the first to notice, and the whole room is stunned. Chen Yuan mocks them, saying they must be very bold to have lost their sense of danger in doing something like this. Ruiyu feels a wave of relief wash over her. Pineapple Head charges at Chen Yuan, shouting if he's tired of living, but immediately gets slapped, crashing into everything in the room. Chen Yuan calls him an idiot and tells him to disappear. A guard steps forward, questioning if Chen Yuan knows who he's messing with and the status of the family he's challenging. Chen Yuan laughs, saying it's a family that sells their daughter and another that buys her. He dares anyone to touch him. Sanchu, realizing Chen Yuan isn't an ordinary person, tells everyone to calm down and wonders how Chen Yuan found out about their meeting and had the nerve to crash it. Approaching Chen Yuan, Sanchu asks which family he belongs to, but Chen Yuan dismisses him, saying he isn't qualified to know. Pineapple Head starts to shout again, but his father silences him. Chen Yuan looks at Ruiyu and reassures her that he will help her family's financial troubles. He walks over to the table and picks up the contract while her father asks what he's doing. Chen Yuan coldly responds, calling her father brain-dead for trying to sell his daughter for such a low price. He then tears up the contract, declaring that he will buy 60% of the company for 500 million. Everyone is shocked. 500 million. Sanchu starts sweating, realizing that anyone who can throw around such sums must come from a family worth at least 10 billion. Still, he can't figure out where Chen Yuan comes from, despite knowing all the powerful families in the area. Ruiyu's father, excited by the prospect of such a large sum, starts dreaming of not just saving the company but expanding it. However, Chen Yuan interrupts his thoughts, saying that to provide the 500 million, he has one condition. He points to Ruiyu, who is taken aback, wondering if he plans to buy her like everyone else. She drops her bag, feeling disheartened, thinking that Chen Yuan is just like the others. Tears well up as she recalls a memory. But then Chen Yuan reveals that his condition is for 60% of the company to be transferred to her name. Once she holds more than half, he will transfer the funds. Ruiyu lights up, feeling as if a weight has been lifted off her shoulders, finally free from her cage. She begins to see Chen Yuan as her hero, and her admiration for him skyrockets, instantly reaching a favorability score of 85. A man arrives with a contract, and Chen Yuan gently holds Ruiyu's hand, telling her that after signing it, she will have control over her life. The money is then instantly transferred to the accounts of her family members, who become emotional. Her father, still stunned, asks Chen Yuan if that's really all he wants. Chen Yuan replies that it is, but warns him that from now on, he controls the rise and fall of their family, and he had better not do anything to harm Ruiyu again. Chen Yuan then tells her that there's nothing left to say here and that they should leave. Sanchu, suddenly trying to save face, praises Chen Yuan for his hard work and asks him not to take his son's actions to heart, secretly thinking that Chen Yuan must be a god of wealth to spend 500 million so casually. Ruiyu's father, realizing how powerful Chen Yuan is, knows it would be foolish to become his enemy. Meanwhile, Pineapple Head, still nursing his wounds, yells at his father for letting him get slapped twice. As Chen Yuan and Rui leave the room, sometime later, while driving in a Ferrari, Rui thanks him for saving her. He replies nonchalantly, reminding her that it wasn't the first time. In a flashback, Rui remembers riding her bike home one day, worried she would encounter trouble. Naturally, she did. Some unsavory characters approached her, one even offering to clean her ears. But before things could escalate, Chen Yuan had appeared out of nowhere, running up and headbutting one of the thugs in the stomach. While holding off the attackers, he told Rui to run without looking back. She fled, terrified, and when she later returned with the police, Chen Yuan was already gone. Tears streaming down her face, Rui tells Chen Yuan she never imagined that the person who saved her once would be him. Filled with emotion, she says she never expected to find him again. Her favorability toward him jumps by another 10 points, bringing it to a legendary 95, and she feels ready to turn the tables on her life. The system Chen Yuan secretly operates congratulates him. Spending 500 million has earned him a personal reward of 50 million, along with several attribute points and newfound proficiency in English, French, Russian, and Korean. Chen Yuan marvels at how smoothly things went this time. As they sit there, Chen Yuan gazes at Rui, thinking how incredible it is that fate has brought them together like this. He never had the courage to talk to her before, always watching her from a distance. The only time he did anything was when he saved her, a memory he cherished with pride. As they lean closer, almost feeling each other's breath, the phone rings, pulling them apart. It's Xiaoyu, and now things are getting complicated. She mentions that she has already moved into the house and bought some furniture. Then, she asks if he knows what tomorrow is. He responds that, of course, he knows, it's her birthday, and he has already gotten her several gifts. While thinking about the critical moment he's in with the house changes, she asks him not to be too extravagant when meeting her friends. He assures her it's fine and says he'll think about what to bring as a gift. Meanwhile, her friend, busy setting up the furniture, secretly marvels at the house, worth 60 million, though she never says it out loud. Chen Yuan, crazy as always, mentions that a friend is organizing a birthday party and asks if she'd like to go. His tactic is to be so open that no one will suspect anything because he's hiding nothing. But Zhao Yu tells him not to worry and go ahead without her, she has enough to handle. Still, she's no fool, she avoids asking questions she knows won't get clear answers. He remarks that it's a shame because she would have been the most beautiful one there. She responds that she'll visit when she can, though he knows she's just being polite. If she had actually accepted, things would have gotten much more complicated. Meanwhile, Zhao Yu is confident in her own allure, believing she can outshine even more beautiful women. She loves a good competition. As she steps out of the car, she thanks Chen Yuan for everything he did today. He jokes that if she feels bad for not being able to go with him, she could repay him in another way. She leans over and gives him a $500 million kiss on the cheek, then warns him that from now on, he's marked by her and belongs to her. As Chen Yuan gets back into the car, pondering whether to go home and play some games, someone suddenly asks if that's his car. He turns around to see Shutong standing there, shocked, with her thumb up. He closes the door and drives off, ignoring her. Shutong's friend remarks that Chen Yuan must have been testing her again, implying he lied the last time they met. Shutong is stunned for the 10th time, realizing she blew it again. She turns to her friend, asking what she should do to win him back. Her friend tells her it's probably too late, but maybe there's still a chance. Shutong is furious, asking if her friend is really thinking about making a move on Chen Yuan. Her friend says Chen Yuan is incredible, so why not? Shutong, enraged, starts acting like Goku, pulling her hair, and they end up fighting over nothing. Our boy, Chen Yuan, simply closed the door and left, but Shutong and her friend's fight only grows uglier. They roll on the ground as people start recording the brawl. Sometime later, Shutong is devastated, having lost both the man and her friend. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan keeps rising, and the gap between them only widens, leaving Shutong with no more chances. Suddenly, Shen Shui from Dreamland approaches Shutong, asking if she's interested in becoming an internet celebrity and hints that she knows a way to help her get Chen Yuan back. Back at home, Chen Yuan is simply wondering what to buy for Kiki as a gift. Just as he's about to leave his room, one of his friends mentions that Shutong has started a live stream. In it, Shutong spills all the details of what happened between her and the top spender on the platform, telling everyone about their long history and how, after everything they've been through, he no longer wants her. Chen Yuan is furious, while his friend curiously wonders if Shutong really was involved with that wealthy guy. But our protagonist is already boiling with anger. He knows she's still trying to play the victim, but the whole scheme seems out of character for her, someone else must be behind it. He quickly calls one of his contacts, asking about the sponsor of Shutong's live stream. Soon after, he's informed that it's Dreamland, Shen Shui's company. Chen Yuan is livid. Shen Shui dared to provoke him, thinking he wouldn't retaliate. Meanwhile, over at Dreamland, Shen Shui is overjoyed with the success of the live stream, despite being reprimanded when she first pitched the idea to her boss. One of her employees uncovered Chen Yuan's childhood connection to Shutong, which Shen Shui saw as her opportunity to win over the influential Chen Yuan. She smugly thinks she's a genius. But soon, she gets a call from her boss, informing her that their company has been banned from the platform. Chen Yuan had contacted the ultra-wealthy group he's a part of, advising everyone to withdraw any investments or associations with Dreamland. The group, filled with billionaires who trust each other, immediately followed his lead, making countless calls to pull out all their funds, triggering a financial storm. As a result, Dreamland was banned across multiple platforms and forced to cease operations. Shen Shui, trembling with anger, realizes they need 10 million to keep the business afloat, but they don't have the funds. Investors have pulled out, and even the streamers working for her have abandoned ship, not wanting to stay with a company that's blacklisted. Standing amidst the ruins of her once thriving business, clutching boxes as the office empties, Shen Shui is at a loss, wondering who could wield such power against her. She's convinced it must be Mr. Yuan, but why would he do this? Meanwhile, even Shutong has been banned from platforms, all thanks to Chen Yuan's powerful connections. Now, it's time for him to buy something for Kiki. Suddenly, Shinshu smacked her face against the glass, startling him. Tears welled up in her eyes as she admitted she had been foolish and begged for forgiveness. Thus, the counterattack began, with her favorability at 0. Yet, he thought to himself that he wasn't interested in older women, despite the fact she often returned from the market carrying 2 massive bags. He rolled down the window and, in full Jigachad mode, told her it would be best if she stopped bothering him. Strangely, she collapsed to the ground, drooling, and wondered why she hadn't noticed how handsome he was, especially when he spoke to her so coldly. Her favorability increased, and he sped off in his Ferrari. At Kiki's mansion, her friends were all impressed by the new house. Suddenly, one of them asked a question. A girl with green hair wondered if the place was really hers, as she had heard the owner was an old man. Kiki's friend quickly told them to hush, saying it was absurd to think she'd be involved with an old man. However, the girl's boyfriend chimed in, claiming it was true and that the owner even had a 12-year-old daughter. Everyone started doubting whether the house truly belonged to her or if it was just a favor from some wealthy man. But then her friend slammed some paperwork on the table, proving she was the sole owner of the house, and the group began to believe she had bought it with her live stream earnings. Meanwhile, Kiki was feeling anxious, wondering why he hadn't arrived yet. He was on his way in the Ferrari, carrying a teddy bear. He parked far away to avoid drawing attention. Suddenly, he heard something behind him, and a car nearly ran over his foot before stopping in front of everyone. They wondered aloud if it was Tang. A blonde man named Chen Yuan stepped out of the car and handed his keys to someone, ordering them to park it. At that moment, he noticed Chen Yuan standing nearby. He couldn't believe Kiki had invited this sewer rat to the party, especially since he brought a teddy bear, which he found ridiculous. Just then, Kiki called out that Chen Yuan had finally arrived. As both men turned toward her, she said she had been waiting for him for a long time. Tang Yuan, beaming, told her how happy he was to see her, but she brushed him aside and went straight to Chen Yuan, thanking him for the teddy bear. Everyone started whispering about how Tang Yuan had been ignored while he wondered why Kiki was paying attention to this kid. Suddenly, a red truck pulled up behind him, and he saw the perfect opportunity to show off. He told Kiki that he had brought a gift he was sure she would love as workers unloaded something from the truck. He thought to himself that Chen Yuan should have stayed in the sewer, and now he'd teach him the difference between them. He presented her with a Yamaha CF6 piano, saying it was the perfect gift for the star of the day. When he asked if she liked it, she admitted she did but said it was too expensive, offering to pay him back. He shrugged it off, saying the price meant nothing to him. Besides, he had composed a special piece just for her. The girls were all excited, eager to hear him play. He sat down at the piano and began, impressing everyone with his skill. The girls swooned, commenting on how perfect Kiki and Tang Yuan were together, especially with his musical talent. Kiki complimented him, saying she couldn't compare to his talent, but he waved it off, claiming she was being too kind. Then, he turned to Chen Yuan and asked if he could show some of his talent. Chen Yuan smiled, recognizing that Tang Yuan was trying to humiliate him, and agreed to give it a try. Kiki wondered if Chen Yuan even knew how to play the piano, though it was obvious he didn't. However, with 35 enhancement points, any skill can be mastered. The system notified him that it would take 10 points to learn the piano, and he immediately used them. Smirking, he requested 50 years of piano experience from the system, determined to make Tang Yuan look foolish. As Chen Yuan sat at the piano, his entire demeanor changed. He started playing, and Tang Yuan was stunned. It was the same piece he had just performed, but Chen Yuan had already memorized it. But Chen Yuan wasn't done yet. He told the crowd the real surprise was coming, then accelerated the tempo, flawlessly hitting every note. The audience was sweating, wondering if he had 4 hands. They couldn't believe their eyes. They thought Chen Yuan must have undergone brutal training to achieve such mastery. He was like a machine gun, firing off every note with precision. When he finished, smoke rose from the piano. The party fell silent. Like a true legend, Chen Yuan pulled out a cigarette from a pack, placed it on the hot piano string, and lit it effortlessly. He then turned to Tang Yuan, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "Your skills are good, just keep working hard." He placed the cigarette in Tang Yuan's mouth, adding that playing the piano was about expressing emotions, not turning it into a competition. Tang Yuan, taken aback, seemed to fall in love with Chen Yuan, saying he finally understood. Everyone was left in awe. Kiki, sitting on the couch with a mischievous grin, thought to herself that she had chosen the right person. She realized that Chen Yuan was a treasure among men, and her favorability toward him soared to 95. The counterattack had been successful. Chen Yuan automatically evolved to a level 60 piano maestro, and Kiki was now a loyal follower. Since he had spent 78 million on her, he received 7 million in return. The guy was finally managing to use the system to get rich. With 25 more enhancement points, he didn't even know where to spend them. Suddenly, someone came from behind, commenting on how full of surprises he was. It was Kiki, saying he had made her very happy that night. He responded that the performance was his second gift, asking how she planned to thank him. A new girl then appeared, Kim Bingsu, also known as the Ice Beauty. She wasn't famous for her looks but for her hostile attitude towards men. Because of this, everyone speculated she might prefer women, and since she was always close to the president, people even thought they were in a relationship. The truth, however, was that she had been kidnapped as a child. Although the police saved her in time and nothing happened, the trauma left her with a deep hatred for men. Kiki then asked Chen Yuan who he thought was more beautiful between her and Bingsu. He told Kiki that out of all the women he had met, she was the most beautiful, all while thinking that he should avoid women like Bingsu since they were all trouble. At that moment, Kiki called Bingsu over to meet him. She apologized, saying she had been stuck in traffic. Kiki introduced Chen Yuan, and Bingsu immediately asked if he was the guy who played the piano earlier. He confirmed it, but she remarked that she had heard he was a man with relationships with many girls, a guy with no morals, even if he had some talent. Chen Yuan felt the urge to strangle her, but Kiki quickly calmed him down, explaining that Bingsu had always been like that. However, the system doesn't forgive, and a new target appeared, Kim Bingsu, 25 years old, 52 kilos, 9.3 in appearance, and a favorability score of -80. The system even promised combat skills if he completed the challenge. Chen Yuan threw the system aside, frustrated that after dealing with an older woman, now there was another woman he didn't want to get involved with. The night went on, and it was time for birthday wishes. Everyone was happy, cutting the cake, until Bingsu called Kiki aside for a private conversation. Outside, Bingsu warned Kiki that she should stay away from Chen Yuan. Kiki asked why, and Bingsu said that Chen Yuan was involved with many girls and that she didn't want to see her friend caught in a toxic relationship. Plus, she was about to graduate and intended to pass the president's position to Kiki. Kiki seemed interested in the president's role, remembering how they used to compete and argue a lot when she first arrived. But now, Bingsu was offering the position to her. Were the rumors about Bingsu true? Was she seeking fun, with a capital L? Embarrassed, Kiki responded that she didn't deserve the position and suggested they find someone else. But Bingsu moved closer, saying that love had blinded Kiki because she wasn't acting like the ambitious person she once knew. Kiki even mentioned considering leaving the student council to spend more time with Chen Yuan. Bingsu became angry, accusing Kiki of losing her ambition and being foolish because of that guy. Her favorability kept dropping while Chen Yuan wondered why he couldn't even enjoy a piece of cake without losing points. As the party was wrapping up and guests were leaving, Bingsu stopped Chen Yuan, asking him to wait. She had something to tell him. He was about to leave, thinking her rising favorability made her even more adorable. All she did was invite him to watch a movie the next day. He assumed it was an invitation for some Netflix and chill. Suddenly, he heard someone crying in the background. It was Su-won, leaning against his car, devastated and wondering why he had wasted his life practicing the piano. Chen Yuan felt awkward seeing him there and went over to talk, surprising Su-won. Startled, Su-won asked what he wanted. Chen Yuan told him losing a piano duel wasn't a big deal, feeling guilty for humiliating him using the system. But Su-won misunderstood, thinking Chen Yuan was belittling him. Chen Yuan quickly clarified, but Su-won admitted that although Chen Yuan's skills were good, it didn't matter because his own family was incredibly wealthy, and he had everything. He pulled out his car key, confidently claiming that Chen Yuan was probably just a poor guy without a penny to his name. However, Chen Yuan was heading toward his Ferrari. Su-won, lying on the ground, broke his car key in shock, wondering how someone dressed so simply could drive a Ferrari. As Chen Yuan drove away, he thought about what movie to watch with Kiki tomorrow. Suddenly, he noticed Bingsu standing alone in the middle of nowhere. She looked cold, and he briefly considered that she might catch a chill, but he didn't care and sped off. However, in his rearview mirror, he saw a group of guys surrounding her. They asked if she was alone and if she needed a bodyguard. One of them said if she made them happy, they'd even protect her for free. She became furious, warning them that if they touched her again, she'd call the police. The men just laughed, saying her anger made it even more fun. But the laughter quickly ended when Bingsu kicked one of them in the groin. As he doubled over in pain, she turned and ran. His friends immediately chased after her as she fled, confident she could outrun them, but there were too many. Suddenly, she ran into Chen Yuan, who asked if she was alright. She was surprised to see him, but by then the guys had already surrounded them both. The one she had kicked ordered his friends to capture her quickly. She cursed men, thinking they were all scum, and now she was trapped because of running into this damn Chen Yuan. But Chen warned the thugs that they had 2 minutes to leave. The guy with the mohawk asked what would happen if they didn't. Moments later, all the attackers were lying on the ground, beaten. Chen Yuan wiped his hands, saying he had warned them. He then turned to Bingsu and asked if she was okay, but lost 5 favorability points in the process. He was stunned. After saving her, he was now at -95 points. Bingsu glared at him with fiery eyes. He couldn't understand why. She accused him of thinking he was impressive for pulling off that stunt. Did he believe such a trick would work on her? She said she was simply waiting for her car. Some thugs showed up, and he saved her. Clearly, he had orchestrated the whole thing. Not only did he underestimate her intelligence, but he thought he could deceive her so easily. Grabbing his collar, she told him that Kiki was even willing to give up the student council presidency just to be with a guy who deceived everyone. Turning away, she declared that men like him made her even angrier. Chen Yuan couldn't believe what she was saying. She had made up an entire story. What madness was this? He called after her, wanting to explain, but she cut him off, saying she didn't need any explanations and hoped he wouldn't try such a trick again. Left in disbelief, Chen stood there, not knowing what to do, as the beaten thug slowly started getting up. He vented his frustration by hitting the one nearest to him before walking off, cursing everyone and the situation. Just then, his phone rang, and he wondered who it was. It was Ruoyu. From her presidential suite, she asked if he was free tomorrow. He asked why, and she said she wanted to see a movie with him. Now things were getting complicated. He had already made plans to watch a movie with Kiki. Before he could respond, Ruoyu mentioned that it was the first time she had invited anyone like this and just hoped he wouldn't reject her. Chen Yuan came up with a sneaky plan. He would meet one girl in the morning and the other in the evening. The next morning, a friend texted him wanting to meet up. When they met, his friend explained that he had bought movie tickets for a girl, but she had stood him up, so he wanted Chen Yuan to join him instead. Chen felt obligated to agree since this friend had always been there for him during his poorer days. Now, his schedule was packed. He'd watch with his friend at 2 in the afternoon, with Kiki at 5, and with Ruoyu at 8. It was going to be a long day. Suddenly, he noticed a strange girl sitting in his car, applying makeup. Shocked, he asked what she was doing there. She apologized, saying she was so focused on her makeup that she had entered the wrong car by accident. Chen Yuan told her that since she realized her mistake, she could leave now, but she insisted that although she had entered by accident, she had found the right person. Feeling a connection, she asked for his contact information. With his phone in hand, Chen Yuan lied, saying he didn't have a phone, clearly wanting to avoid her. She shrugged it off, saying she'd leave, but just as she was getting out, someone outside recognized her. It was Li Wenji, a friend of Chen Yuan's and the one he was supposed to go to the cinema with. Li Wenji, surprised, asked what she was doing in Chen's car, wondering if something was going on between them. Chen Yuan, worried about a misunderstanding, got out of the car and tried to explain, but Li Wenji angrily accused the girl of seeing a luxury car and throwing herself at Chen. Chen Yuan confirmed that this was exactly what happened. They locked the car and left, while the girl was left in disbelief that Li Wenji knew such wealthy people. While watching the movie, Li Wenji asked why he couldn't seem to attract any women, lamenting his bad luck. Chen Yuan reassured him not to worry, while two girls sitting behind them commented on how odd it was that they were watching a movie together like that. Chen Yuan then told his friend that he should never show his desperation for women. He explained that the more you chase after women, the worse they treat you. A real man doesn't spend his money on women but invests in himself to impress them. His friend was amazed, feeling like he had just heard profound wisdom. Grabbing Chen's hand, he exclaimed that he finally understood how things worked. Chen Yuan warned him to be careful, joking that people might get the wrong idea. He explained that if his friend wanted to attract more women, he just needed to be a bit more handsome, a bit wealthier, and have a few more girlfriends. His friend, frustrated, realized that these tips were completely impractical. As they exited the cinema, Chen Yuan's friend thanked him, and Chen Yuan mentioned that he had a special engagement in about 2 hours. Meanwhile, the girls behind them walked away convinced they were a couple, exactly as Chen Yuan had planned to escape and embark on his next adventure. Outside the cinema, someone was waiting. It was Kiki, curious about where Chen Yuan had been. Suddenly, a guy named Wu Banqi approached, asking Kiki for her number. She politely declined, saying she was on a date, but the guy insisted, claiming it wouldn't interfere with her date just to give him her number. Just then, someone tapped Wu Banqi on the shoulder. It was Chen Yuan. Smiling, he offered to show how it's done and casually put his hand beside Kiki, asking if they could go somewhere quieter to have a deep conversation. Wu Banqi, in disbelief, wondered if this kind of approach would actually work, but Kiki responded positively, leaving Wu Banqi fuming in frustration. They went to watch an action movie, but Kiki kept glancing at Chen Yuan, noticing that he was constantly on his phone. She asked if he wasn't interested in the movie, to which he explained that it was family business troubling him lately. She believed him, thinking that someone with his wealth must have many burdens. She admired his skills, but knew that behind all the success were hours of hard work and sweat. He had trained relentlessly since childhood. He should be focusing on his future, yet here he was, spending time with her. Suddenly, Kiki placed her hand on his, startling him. When he looked over, she was crying. He felt awkward, wondering what had made her so emotional. After the movie, as they walked down the street, she asked if he wanted to recommend something. Just as he was about to answer, he received a call. It was the friend he had asked to call right after the movie, giving him an excuse to leave. Acting serious, he said it was an urgent matter he had to handle. Kiki was confused, but he explained that his friend needed help, and she graciously said it was fine for today. As he left, she thought he was such a noble man, choosing to help his friend over staying with her. In the car, Chen Yuan was feeling proud of himself, thinking his plan was genius. He just needed to get through the last part of his day. He arrived at his next destination and texted to let her know he was downstairs, thinking that his life was more stressful than a battlefield. When she appeared, casually asking if he'd waited long, he was smitten. She looked stunning, a true treasure among women who could pull off any style. She asked if he was ready to go, and he thought to himself that if everything went smoothly, they might take things to the next level. They went to the cinema, then to a restaurant, and eventually, the night came to an end back at her place. As he was about to leave, she told him to rest well and that she had enjoyed the evening. But Chen Yuan hesitated and asked if he could come in for a glass of water. She happily agreed. The scene shifted to him taking a shower while she stood there wondering why she had let this happen. She had only expected to give him a glass of water, but after he arrived, he had said it was too late to leave, and she had allowed him to stay. She couldn't believe she had agreed to that. What if he asked for more? It wouldn't be impossible. Then she noticed something in his pocket, movie tickets. She pulled them out and saw tickets for all the films he had watched that day. Our boy had been caught red-handed. When Chen Yuan came out of the shower, he froze, seeing the tickets on the table. She demanded to know what they meant. Either he was a movie addict or he had been on dates with several women. Why had he tried to involve himself in her life while being with others? Chen Yuan was speechless as she berated him for playing with her emotions. Her favorability dropped by 20 points, bringing it down to 75. Chen Yuan trembled, knowing this was the moment he had dreaded. He tried to defend himself, saying that he never thought she would lose trust in him over a few movie tickets. Everything he had done for her seemed to vanish. Furious, she snapped, telling him he still had the nerve to make excuses. In desperation, he called Wanji, asking her to explain. Wanji, confused, answered, wondering why he was calling so late. The girl took the phone and asked Wanji if she had gone to the cinema with Chen Yuan earlier that day. Wanji confirmed, explaining that he had invited a girl who declined, so they went together. But as soon as the girl heard the name Wanji mentioned, she snapped back to reality, questioning what was really going on. She angrily hung up, unsettled by the situation. Now, she was unsure whether to believe Chen Yuan or if his friend was covering for him. She had the number of the girl Chen Yuan claimed to have invited, so she decided to call. When the girl answered, she confirmed that Chen Yuan had asked her out but she had declined, only to see a guy in a Ferrari show up. Chen Yuan asked if she wanted to check his receipts to see what he had bought. Turning away, he expressed his deep disappointment. She quickly apologized, claiming it must have been a misunderstanding, and begged for his forgiveness. But he slammed the door behind him. Outside, he thought to himself that he had managed to get out of that sticky situation. He didn't lie often. A message popped up on his phone, and he responded saying it was fine. He understood and forgave her. She felt relieved, thinking how kind he was, and her favorability for him rose by 21 points. Now that her favorability was even higher than before, he relaxed. He realized he needed to be more cautious, as he had almost ruined everything. He reminded himself that some connections were for building status and earning points, while others were simply for enjoyment. If he got a revenge system, he would use it to build a harem. As he walked, a group of girls passed by, chatting excitedly about a game they were heading to watch. The name sounded familiar, so Chen Yuan decided to check it out too. The court was packed with people. The girls were thrilled, cheering and proclaiming their love for the players. Off to the side stood Su Tong and her friend, who suddenly appeared next to Chen Yuan. He greeted the famous Su Lil. Just then, someone tapped his shoulder. It was Jiaying, asking if he enjoyed basketball. The guys around them, envious of Chen Yuan, muttered how lucky he was. Suddenly, Bing Sui appeared, complaining that men loved gossiping about women. Kitty told her to relax, they were just here to watch the game. On the court, Suwon was uneasy seeing Chen Yuan there again, especially with a crowd of girls around him. This felt like a disaster waiting to happen. But spotting Kiki in the crowd, Suwon decided this was his chance to show off. He had been practicing basketball for the past 6 months, and now was the time to embarrass Chen Yuan. He threw the ball in Chen Yuan's direction. Chen, sensing something coming, reacted like Spider-Man, catching the ball effortlessly. He turned to Suwon and commented on how shameful it was to act out just because he had lost the piano competition. Suwon, unfazed, challenged Chen Yuan to a basketball match, but our boy was already losing his patience. He threw the ball back with such force that it knocked Su-won back. Kiki was impressed by the powerful throw, while Bing Sui remarked that men were savages who only knew how to fight. Su-won lay on the ground, stunned, with his friends rushing to check if he was okay. He couldn't believe Chen Yuan was that strong. Chen, however, said he wasn't interested in a one-on-one match. He suggested a 5-on-5 to really see the school's talent. Everyone was shocked at this challenge. Su-won felt confident, knowing he had the school's basketball team, the coach, and the crowd on his side. It was more like a 1-on-9 match, and he was certain he would win. The game began, and Su-won received the ball, eager to show off and finally prove to Kiki who was the better man. Chen Yuan, however, was surrounded by both his enemies and teammates, but he knew this would happen. Who needed a team when he had a system to rely on? With that, he added 30 years of basketball experience to his skills. Su-won, still brimming with confidence, jumped to dunk the ball, but Chen Yuan blocked it with ease. The entire crowd froze in disbelief as Su was defeated so quickly. With just one play, Su was already psychologically shaken. Chen Yuan then said it was his turn, but the referee blew the whistle, calling a foul. Su took the free throw, scoring a point and thinking Chen Yuan was foolish. After all, the whole crowd was on Su's side, and there was no way he could lose. But the audience was beginning to notice something off. It was shameful for the referee to call such a foul, and Chen Yuan was getting angry. Now fully motivated to humiliate Su, Chen Yuan stole the ball and scored a basket effortlessly. Su's team hadn't even moved. Furious, Su scolded his teammates for failing to block one guy and even cursed Chen Yuan's team for not stopping him. Once again, they tried to surround Chen Yuan, but he jumped and scored another basket. The referee and players couldn't understand why he was trying so hard when the game was clearly rigged against him. Why didn't he just give up? The referee began to recall the lessons he had taught his students about respect, and how one should always give their all when on the court. Watching Chen Yuan play with such determination left the entire basketball community emotional. Chen Yuan advanced once more, confused as to why everyone seemed frozen. The crowd couldn't figure out what was happening either. It was as if no one else was moving on the court. From a distance, Kiki noticed that Chen Yuan was winning not just the game, but also maintaining his virtues. Su-won, on the other hand, couldn't comprehend why no one was following his plan anymore. The score was now 60-2. Su was exhausted, while Chen Yuan prepared to humiliate him again. In that moment, Su-won thought that if he could at least block this final shot, he might save himself from complete embarrassment. Chen Yuan approached, ready for action. Su-won tried to throw his elbow into Ken's chest, but instead, his own arm ended up broken. He fell to the ground in pain as Chen Yuan slammed a powerful dunk. With that, Ken gained favorability points with Kiki, Su-tom, Su-lil, and Xian. As he walked off the court, he remarked that Su-won didn't deserve to be team captain, saying it was an insult to his skills to compete against someone so dirty. Su-won, not backing down, told him to stop being arrogant, claiming Ken would regret it soon. Some girls nearby commented that they forgot to record the game because Ken was just too impressive. Xian, intrigued, wanted to know where Chen Yuan was. Su-tom and Kiki both tried to offer him bottles of water, but all four of them ended up holding water bottles, awkwardly spilling some. Chen Yuan, feeling the pressure, nervously fled. He knew that choosing one bottle over the others could cost him the rest. After the game, he took a shower and received a friend request from someone in the wealthy circle. The guy called him up, and Ken asked what was going on. The guy said it wasn't much, but wondered if Ken was interested in getting a wife. Chen Yuan was immediately suspicious of the offer. The next target was Gao Xin Yuan, a 22-year-old actress whose career had been going well until she became involved in an online scandal. Her company had terminated her contract. Gao Lang, her brother, was the one who reached out to Ken for help. When Ken asked if he heard correctly, was Gao Lang really suggesting he marry his sister? Gao Lang clarified, saying it wasn't exactly that. He explained that his sister was falsely accused, her contract was cancelled, and he wanted to know if Ken would like to buy the house she lived in. Ken thought to himself that he did need a house, and considering she was an actress who probably loved to spend money, she seemed like a good candidate for his system. Ken agreed to meet her and inspect the house. Gao Lang promised to set everything up, thinking that the group always told the truth. Mr. Yen was truly extraordinary, and the rumor that he saved the Xiao family must be real. Meanwhile, at home, Gao Xuanyan was fuming. With her career on a downward spiral, plenty of men were offering to marry her, but she considered them all trash. None were worthy of her beauty. All she wanted was to be a simple actress. Why did life have to be so hard? Then she received a call from her brother, who reassured her not to worry about money. He had found the perfect person to help. Confused, she asked who it was, and her brother mentioned a highly influential man. Hearing the name Mr. Yen, she immediately imagined an old, overweight man. Furious, she threatened to beat her brother when he got home. He tried to explain that Mr. Yen was incredible and asked her to show him the house since he'd be arriving soon. She angrily hung up, thinking all men were the same, disasters. She vowed that she'd rather jump off a building than accept anything from this man. When Chen Yuan arrived at the house, he was impressed by the structure and how close it was to everything. He rang the doorbell, and Gao Xuanyan assumed the old man had arrived, running over like a fool. She slowly walked down the hallway, deliberately taking her time to annoy him. She opened the door, sarcastically telling him to stop rushing her, but when she saw Chen Yuan, she blushed. Before she could ask who he was, Ken introduced himself and entered, apologizing for his sudden arrival. She was surprised that the boss was so young and handsome. He sat down on the sofa and invited her to sit as well, which puzzled her since it was her house. She asked if he didn't want to see more of the house, but he responded that he had seen enough to know it was good. He added that the house wasn't the main reason he was there. Confused, she asked why then. Ken replied that what mattered most was her, and he wanted her to be his mistress. Boldly activating his system, Ken thought it was time to go on the offensive. Gao Xuanyan, who rated a 9.2 in appearance but had -35 favorability for him, wasn't pleased. She was shocked that this guy had the audacity to walk in and ask her to be his mistress. Determined to humiliate him, she responded by saying he was very straightforward, but it wouldn't be impossible if he met a few conditions. First, she wanted a car worth 10 million, a luxurious apartment, and an investment of 2 billion in 2 films where she would star as the lead actress. Before she could finish, Ken interrupted, saying that was easy, simpler than he expected. Gao Xuanyan was in disbelief. Of course, Ken was eager to spend all the system's money. Later, when Gao Lang returned home, he was shocked to see Chen Yuan's car still outside. Why hadn't he left yet? He went inside and asked his sister why the car was still there. With a heavy sigh, she told him that she had actually received the car as a gift from Ken. On top of that, he had deposited a large sum of money into her account. Her brother asked if everything went well with the house sale and whether she at least got the 2 million she wanted. Showing her phone, she revealed she had received 1 billion. Her brother's eyes lit up, thinking Chen Yuan must really like his sister. Finally, Gao Lang could retire and live the life of an uncle who only smokes cigarettes. Meanwhile, Gao Xuanyan couldn't stop thinking about Chen Yuan. He had given her the money, transferred the car into her name, and left, saying he only helped because he hated seeing beautiful women suffer. What a hero. She found herself unable to forget about him, and her feelings toward him began to improve. At Bengsu's graduation, she warned Kiki to be cautious around Chen Yuan. Kiki tried to defend him, explaining that Chen wasn't the person Bengsu thought he was. However, Bengsu was dead set on hating him. She even confided that on her birthday, Chen had orchestrated a gang of thugs just to scare her. Kiki, taken aback, said that Bengsu seemed troubled by her own imagination. Chen Yuan, in reality, was seen as a hero by everyone at school, even showing a picture of Shulil and her dad holding a poster in his honor. Kiki also pointed out that Chen hadn't even known she'd be at the party, making it impossible for him to have set anything up. Bengsu started to second-guess herself, wondering if she had blown things out of proportion. Feeling embarrassed, she left without another word to Kiki. Now, Bengsu was mortified, realizing she had likely been wrong in her assumptions. Back at work, she was worn out, haunted by the fact that she had told her friend that Chen Yuan was hitting on her when, in reality, he wasn't. Worse still, whenever she thought back on the incident, all she could remember was Chen Yuan protecting her. Her boss snapped her back to reality by calling her in for a meeting, informing her that she would need to attend a charity dinner with the city's top business elites. The boss wanted her to befriend a new millionaire, Yang, who had recently made a name for himself. Bengsu felt disheartened. She had chosen a company led by a female boss to avoid this kind of situation, but now she had no choice. It was either comply or lose her job. Meanwhile, at home, Chen Yuan was chatting with his fellow millionaires. After giving Gao Xuanyan an endless flow of funds, she had successfully defended herself against the false accusations. Chen Yuan was impressed by how well she handled it all. During the call, Hao Changqi invited him to the charity dinner. Thinking it would be a gathering of wealthy people, Chen saw it as an opportunity for someone to spend a lot of money, so he decided to go. At Gao Xuanyan's mansion, she continued her battle against the accusations, but every time she needed more marketing funds, Chen would send another transfer. She kept telling herself that this didn't mean anything, that she wasn't falling for him. But her growing favorability said otherwise. The night of the charity dinner finally came, and of course, all the millionaires Chen had previously humiliated were in attendance, from the bar owner to the basketball player. Chen Yuan excused himself to go to the bathroom. He had done extensive research on the new magnate in town and was determined to meet them. He imagined this figure to be someone sophisticated, an elder with deep insight. So, he stationed himself near the door, wanting to be the first to greet this person. But to his surprise, it was Chen Yuan who arrived. Chen Yuan was puzzled and thought Chen must be there to work security, especially since his suit matched the guards. In reality, Chen had spent 20,000 on the suit, only ever used to spending his system's money. Chen Yuan approached him, sarcastically calling him the Prince of Basketball, and asking if he was so broke that he had to work as security now. Chen calmly replied that he was invited to the banquet. Chen Yuan, not believing him, invited Chen to enter with him, confident that Chen's name wouldn't be on the list. At the entrance, the security guards asked Chen to show his invitation. Chen was confused, he hadn't received one. Chen Yuan circled him, laughing and mocking him for trying to bluff his way in. Just then, another car arrived. It was Bangsu, coming for work. All the men nearby were struck by her appearance, and she hated arriving in such a flashy car, but it was part of the company's image. Hearing the commotion, she glanced over to see Chen Yuan arguing with the security guards, insisting he had been invited. The guard explained that everyone who was invited had received an invitation at home. Bangsu laughed in Chen's face, asking if he really thought he was that important. But then she intervened, explaining that her invitation allowed for a guest, and she chose to bring Chen as her plus one. The guards let him through without a word, while Chen was left wondering why Bangsu would help him, considering she hated him. She told him to hurry up, making it clear that her opinion of him hadn't changed. She was just repaying a favor since he had saved her that night. But Chen wasn't pleased. He had been planning to humiliate Chen Yuan, and now Bangsu had ruined it. He told her not to consider this as repaying the favor because he never asked her to be his lackey. It would be better if she stopped meddling in other people's business. The group of extras mocked, saying it was better this way since this loser would never make it into a place like that. The blonde guy sneered at Chen Yuan, telling him this area was reserved for elites and that he shouldn't come dressed like a security guard. This was all fueling Chen Yuan's irritation. Just then, a member of the group went over to see what the fuss was about, noticing that Tang Siyuan, the blonde guy, was trying to humiliate Cigarette Soldier. Worried this would stir up trouble, he suggested calling Hashin. Inside the event, a suited man named Tang Aji was eagerly awaiting the arrival of Mr. Smoke. One of the men mentioned that while Chen Yuan was eccentric and very wealthy, they always treated each other like brothers. Suddenly, he got a call saying Chen Yuan was being humiliated and barred at the entrance. Shocked, he questioned how anyone could dare to do this to a VIP guest. The caller informed him that the one barring him was Tang Siyuan, who was related to the man standing beside him. Aji rushed out, fuming that his family's reputation was being damaged. Outside, Siyuan continued to mock Chen Yuan, saying he looked just right for a security guard. Chen Yuan slapped him, telling him to take his effeminate hands off and stop giving orders. He murmured that even though they might be comrades, Siyuan didn't have the right to boss him around. Spreading his arms in defiance, Siyuan bragged that his brother controlled billions in the family's funds. As the celebrated second son of the Tang family, he was undoubtedly above a mere security guard. Watching all this, Bingshu felt that while Siyuan was arrogant, he was still better than the distasteful Chen Yuan, who had rejected her generosity. At that moment, everyone noticed Aji approaching with the car guy, looking visibly upset. Siyuan cheerfully asked how he could assist his older brother, only to be slapped in the face. Stumbling, he asked why he was being hit. Aji replied that he was bold to even ask and demanded he apologize to Mr. Smoke, or rather, to the great Mr. Yuan. Confused, Siyuan was left at a loss. Aji then turned to Chen Yuan and apologized sincerely, leaving the crowd to realize that Chen Yuan was a person of importance. People around began eagerly offering their business cards, hoping to make connections with him. Devastated, Siyuan couldn't believe it. He had lost at the piano, lost in basketball, and now he had even lost in family status. Was this man his ultimate rival? Hashin also apologized to Chen Yuan, admitting he could have organized things better and should have notified him of his arrival time. Chen Yuan shrugged it off, saying they were friends and there was no need for such formality. He was then escorted inside. Bingshu watched, astonished. Chen Yuan clearly had substantial wealth yet didn't flaunt it. She realized now that someone with his status would naturally be the focus of attention among all the university girls. Feeling ashamed for assuming he had been pursuing her, she covered her face, wondering how she'd complete the task her boss had given her. She even wondered if she'd have to use her appearance to get closer to him. Meanwhile, inside the charity auction, Hashan explained that the items for sale would include jewels, paintings, and even pieces of an island. Chen Yuan was intrigued, and Hashan added that the whole setup was to support the auction. Chen's eyes sparkled with a mischievous look, eager to spend extravagantly. He thought about buying a plot of land in the city, but knew he'd have to gift it to someone for a share later. He considered Ruoyu and Yuchi, but then noticed Bingshu standing nearby. He abandoned the idea, realizing that every time he tried to impress her, she rejected him. Just then, someone stood up, exclaiming how great it was to see Bingshu at the event. Go Xuanyan, the blonde woman to whom Chen had given a mansion, entered the room, looking healthy and confident. From a distance, Chen Yuan thought of buying everything in the venue to gift to her. He also found the seating arrangement interesting. The closer a person was to the front, the more influential they seemed. He realized the name of the person seated beside him belonged to someone prominent in the city. It appeared that Cigarette Soldier was highly respected here. As Chen Yuan observed, a young woman with exceptional potential took her seat. She likely had a clean bill of health too. People around whispered that she was the daughter of Secretary Su. Chen Yuan blushed, flustered upon realizing she was not only from an influential family but also seemed fit and capable. Embarrassed, he looked away, though he wasn't entirely sure why he felt that way. Aji soon introduced himself to her, saying it was an honor to meet her. She recognized him and returned the sentiment, though she inwardly resented having to attend events her father forced her to. Curiously, she noticed the young man beside her wasn't the usual older gentleman who occupied those seats. She tried to make conversation with Chen Yuan, but he pretended not to hear, turning away. Confused, she wondered why he was avoiding her. Was she really that intimidating? Chen Yuan, however, was simply terrified of engaging in conversation that might lead to the system establishing a connection with her. However, she continued to press him, saying it was impolite not to even share his name. Hoshan then leaned over to Chen Yuan, advising him to pay more attention. She was the secretary's daughter, after all, and offered to assist if Chen Yuan wished. Turning around, Chen Yuan introduced himself, and immediately, the system activated. Information popped up: Shu Yuma, 22 years old, 1.73 meters tall, weighing 54 kilos, with a beauty rating of 9.1 and a favorability score of 0. The counterattack provided a 10% return on spending, 35 points, and firearm mastery. But Chen Yuan felt defeated, knowing the system had meddled with him again. Upon hearing his name, she promised to remember it. The auction then began, with the first item being a diamond and platinum replica of the Titanic necklace. Bids quickly rose, starting at 20 million and climbing to 130 to 150 million. At that point, Chen Yuan boldly raised his paddle, bidding 3 billion. The crowd was stunned by his boldness. Shu Yuma observed him, noting that he seemed to control his own finances. No father would allow such reckless spending. Elder attendees grew irritated by the outrageous bidding. The auctioneer asked if anyone would counter Chen Yuan's offer of 105, but silence followed. The sale was finalized, and when processing payment, Chen Yuan stated that it was a gift from Ms. Go Wanyan, to be delivered to her. This caused her favorability toward him to rise by 10 points, and her brother praised the remarkable gift she would soon receive. Despite her annoyance, she couldn't hide the fact that her favorability had now reached 35 points. Angry, she vowed that she wouldn't be swayed by money, declaring herself a woman with dreams and ambitions. With a determined expression, she asked Chen Yuan if he truly believed he could win her over with wealth. She'd show him her resilience. At that moment, the next item was presented, a crystal piano. The auctioneer announced a starting bid of 30 million. Bids went up quickly: 35 million, 40 million, 45 million. Naturally, Chen Yuan raised his bid to 200 million, thinking it would be a perfect gift for Ms. Kiki. Just then, a voice called out from the back, raising the bid to 210 million. He turned to see a woman mage with 2 flaming spheres, recognizing her as the heir to the Fire Group and owner of several gaming companies. He countered with 300 million, to which she replied with 310 million. He fixed her with a hard stare and raised it to 500 million. The elderly crowd lamented. Even the auctioneer seemed vexed by Chen Yuan's antics. The item was sold to him, and she acknowledged her defeat but scoffed that buying a piano just to show off without knowing how to play was foolish. Chen Yuan smirked, asking why she thought he couldn't play, then declared he'd perform. With 60 years of piano mastery thanks to the system, he began to play, and the room filled with emotions as he performed, bringing some to tears. Girls were visibly moved, calling his music nectar for the ears. Shu Yuma, who had some professional music skills herself, grew interested, considering adding him. Chen Yuan noticed her warming up to him, yet bluntly said he'd forgotten his phone. But her interest was piqued, and he gained another 30 favorability points. Wondering why he kept meeting eccentric people, he watched as she insisted he give her his number so she could write it down herself. Apologizing, he claimed to have a poor memory. She retorted that she'd have someone track down his number, and they stood silently, locked in a standoff. Resigned, he said he'd add her contact, and she remarked that she'd known he'd had his phone all along, only trying to mess with her. Reflecting that good things don't just fall into one's lap, she thought to herself, "You have to go after what you want." The auctioneer then announced a new round of sales involving failing companies. Chen Yuan's eyes gleamed with interest as the woman announced a streamer company recently facing troubles and closing down. The opening bid was 50 million, and Chen Yuan immediately offered 60 million. He was perplexed that no one else bid, while everyone else assumed he'd triple the price again. The presenter jested that Chen Yuan was determined to acquire everything in sight, but no other bids followed, and the company was his. As the auctioneer wished him luck in restoring the company, one man in the room, determined to ruin Chen Yuan's joy, discreetly gathered information to bring him down. He learned that the young man was 21 and hailed from Hubei province. His parents harvested oranges and maintained a pond. The investigators researched all the schools he attended, from high school to university. However, a hacker revealed that his bank account was of the global VIP type, a card reserved for fewer than 50 individuals worldwide, typically used for international transactions. An older gentleman couldn't believe it, a farm boy with a card normally reserved for heads of state. Convinced that even the hacker's data was being manipulated, he realized that Chen Yuan must have the power to alter government records and warned the hacker to stop investigating this dangerous individual. AOG noticed the man digging into Chen Yuan's background and discovered something that left him shaken. He began speculating that Chen Yuan might be a descendant of a secretive family. Gossip spread, and soon, everyone was convinced Yuan belonged to the mysterious Chen family, one of the 4 influential families with global reach. People whispered that the world was on the brink of a major upheaval. Even Hozhan grew uneasy, noting that only a dynasty could control such wealth. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan was wandering around, wondering who had spread this rumor, given that his father was simply a fruit vendor. But before he knew it, he was surrounded, people were offering him room numbers, asking him to dance, and one even volunteered to do a backflip to impress him. Flustered, he looked around for an escape and spotted Gao Zhuanin from afar. Seizing the opportunity, he declared he already had a dance partner and made his way toward her. Approaching her, he asked for a dance. Embarrassed, she hesitated, worried he might take advantage, but since he had gifted her the necklace, she felt it would be impolite to refuse, so she reluctantly agreed. Pulling her close, he mentioned that he had turned down 18 others just to dance with her. Using the system, he gained dance skills, and she was touched, noting his warmth and graceful moves. She thought he was full of surprises, but not unpleasant ones, and she found herself starting to enjoy his company. Yet all this effort only earned him a modest 5 favorability points, a tough climb indeed. The crowd murmured about the two, and Chu Yuma found it odd that he was interested in a girl with a scandalous past. Still, at least he wasn't giving in to the mob vying for his attention. Naturally, she was irritated that he had chosen Gao over her. Just then, the same man who had asked her to dance earlier tried again, but she dismissed him, saying she had no interest in older men. The poor man, called old at 30, left feeling crushed. Chen Yuan, meanwhile, was pleased with the small favorability gain from the dance. Soon after, another woman approached him, requesting a dance before he left. The previously rejected man grew angrier, but Chen Yuan coolly replied that he was too tired from his last dance. She shrugged it off and instead asked what he wanted to know about her. Impressed by her persistence, he suggested they talk in a quieter spot. She continued to question him, asking if the actress was his girlfriend, to which he replied no. Excited, the woman took it as a sign that she had a chance. She then inquired about the actress's scandal, and he assured her he didn't care, noting that her reputation would soon recover since he was backing her. When she asked how much he had spent, he replied that he regrettably hadn't spent much, just a few luxury cars, a mansion, and financing 2 $500 million films. Chu Yuma was alarmed, convinced that Chen Yuan was being played. She figured he must have been raised in isolation, focused solely on honing his skills, making him an easy target for Gao Zhuanin's financial demands. Turning to him, she asked if he didn't think her requests were excessive. Chen Yuan dismissed the question, stating that it was natural for a man to spend on a woman, hence his recent $200 million transfer. Grabbing his tie, Yuma cautioned him that he was being deceived and taken advantage of, especially since their relationship wasn't even official. Regaining her composure, she remarked that although it was his money to spend, he would ultimately face the consequences. Chen Yuan insisted he wasn't a fool, but Yuma couldn't shake the thought that love always clouds judgment. Reflecting on his piano performance and extravagant bids, she found it hard to believe such a talented man could be so naive. Her favorability rose further, reaching 45 points. Chen Yuan knew well that she thought he was being taken advantage of by Gao Zuinian, but little did she realize that, in the end, he would be the one emerging victorious. With a mischievous grin, he remarked that she didn't truly know the big brother's skills. Turning to her, he warned her not to criticize Gao Zuinian anymore, saying her behavior was too similar to the very actions she was judging. Stung, she stormed off, fuming that she had a better background, looks, and personality than that actress. Determined, she left, muttering that Chen Yuan should just wait, soon, she'd have him too, as she always got what she wanted. Chen Yuan, on the other hand, sighed and decided he'd need to keep his distance from her in the future. At the end of the event, everyone wanted to connect with him. While he was on his phone, Hashan introduced him to a new acquaintance, Zhou Xiaowei. Zhou was incredibly shy, and Hashan urged him to lift his head and address Mr. Cigarette. Chen Yuan asked why Zhou was so timid and what had brought him there. Zhou hesitantly explained that his family was selling a massive skyscraper. Intrigued, Chen Yuan asked for details, and Zhou revealed it was over 10 stories high, with 1,000 square meters per floor, valued at 2 billion. Even Hashan was taken aback, unaware that his chubby friend was a billionaire. Chen Yuan told Zhou to add him and that he'd come by sometime to check it out. Zhou seemed a bit stunned, assuming Chen Yuan might want just a floor or two, but it seemed he was interested in the whole building. Before leaving, Zhou asked him not to sell it to anyone else, to which Chen Yuan agreed. In the taxi, Chen Yuan pondered who he'd gift a $2 billion building to. It couldn't just be any girl, she'd need a strong mental constitution to handle it. As the taxi accelerated, he lowered his face, and suddenly, the driver got out to confront a woman blocking the road. To Chen Yuan's surprise, it was Bingshu. She climbed into the taxi, instructing the driver to start moving, leaving everyone baffled. Chen Yuan glanced at her, wondering why she was there. Bingshu, enthusiastic about her first job after graduation, explained she was there as a representative of the Carpfish app, seeking investment. Chen Yuan, somewhat flustered, interrupted, asking if she was there to ask for help. She replied that it was indeed a request, but that it would be mutually beneficial. Amused, Chen Yuan pressed, asking if she was begging for assistance. She admitted as much, only to question why he was using money to humiliate her like this, nearly on the verge of tears. Chen Yuan, satisfied, moved closer, knowing exactly what irritated her, and said that if she was coming to him for something, she should be prepared to offer something in return. Even the taxi driver thought he was being a jerk. Bingshu slapped him, shouting that's why he didn't deserve Kiki. His favorability points with her dropped from 10 to -5. Moving aside, he clarified that he had no intention of sleeping with her, he was just provoking her and didn't care much for cold women like her. Her anger flared, and she told him to stop joking around. He calmly responded that he wasn't particularly interested, they'd only met twice, and she was already asking him to invest in her company. Besides, she disrespected him previously and hadn't even apologized. He snapped, ordering her to disappear and instructing the taxi driver to stop. But just then, Chen Yuan realized his troubles were only beginning. The taxi was encircled by 3 vans. Unfortunately, it wasn't a crowd of admiring fans but a group of strange men emerging from the vehicles, a gang of criminals seemingly hunting him. Chen Yuan braced himself for a rough night. Bingshu asked what they should do, and he sarcastically replied that they should just surrender. The criminals, encouraged by his compliance, suggested they wouldn't tie him up too tightly. But he responded with a swift kick to the leader's neck, shocking everyone. Chen Yuan knew this wasn't some harmless prank, these were real criminals, not high school troublemakers. However, his martial arts skills made short work of them. One of the criminals attempted to use Bingshu as a hostage, but she fought back, putting one in a chokehold and even knocking out a tooth. The man, bewildered, wondered what sort of cursed woman she was. Chen Yuan realized that with her involvement, things had taken a dangerous turn. With no other option, he poured all his accumulated points into strength, constitution, and agility. Even his system warned him he'd be a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. With terrifying speed, he unleashed a flurry of punches, flooring each attacker. The leader, desperate, ordered them to seize Bingshu again, but she kneed him in the groin, muttering that more men needed to learn their place. But just then, one of them pulled out an apple peeler. He lunged toward her, shouting that she needed to die. Bingshu was terrified, certain her life was over. But someone caught the blade bare-handed. It was Chen Yuan, who sneered that threatening women was pitiful. Blood dripped to the floor as Bingshu trembled, realizing how close she had come to death. Chen Yuan kicked the man, calling him disgraceful. Moments later, every attacker lay in red-stained puddles. Bingshu mumbled to herself in shock before leaping into Chen Yuan's arms, crying that she'd almost died. That's when he realized the Ice Queen had a soft, endearing side. He gently reassured her, saying there was nothing to worry about since he was there to help. He clarified that the things he'd said in the taxi were only jokes. In truth, he admired her. She looked up, asking if he really meant it, and he assured her, saying he'd even check out the carp fish company because he believed in its potential. She started to see that Chen Yuan was different from other men. He seemed harsh but was truly kind, shameless on the surface but noble at heart. And despite his wealthy background, he'd risked himself to save her. Smiling, he brushed it off, saying it was just a scratch. But by then, it was too late. His favorability points had soared to 80. Right then, the police arrived and apprehended the criminals. A bystander remarked that it hadn't even been hours since he was last seen, and he was already in trouble again. Chen Yuan looked over, surprised to see Su Yuma, who was actually an officer in the explosive unit, always armed with twin grenades. His brutal handling of the criminals had some of them lying on blankets on the asphalt. The officer noted that one was dead and 7 were badly injured, describing the scene as a battlefield. Su Yuma thought that while 8 criminals had come to take him down, the tables had turned. Admiring his combat skills, she joked that maybe he was worth the tea. Meanwhile, Bingshu gazed at him, clearly bothered by the attention he received from other women. Growing irritated, she approached and told him they both needed to go to the station to recount the events. Later, at 3 a.m., an officer came to release Bingshu, but she asked if Chen Yuan would be joining her. The officer explained that he was still being interviewed by the captain, so she decided to wait for him. Another officer found it strange how eagerly she waited. In the interrogation room, the captain ordered the cameras turned off. Chen Yuan sat, wondering what Su Yuma was plotting. Ruble. Just then, someone brought him some noodles. As he ate, he remarked that he hadn't expected her to be a police officer. This comment earned him 5 more favorability points, and she hinted that the possibilities were limitless. Chen Yuan was amused, wondering how eating noodles could increase favorability. He then asked why he, the victim, was being held. She moved closer, telling him not to forget that he'd taken a life today, then grabbed his chin and asked what his relationship with Bingshu was. Flustered, he explained she was only there to discuss an investment. Out of nowhere, she began tearing up the room. Caught off guard, he asked what she was planning. But, respectfully, she pulled out a first aid kit, telling him not to overthink it. Seeing his stunned look, she found it ridiculous that he thought she'd hurt him. He reassured her he'd never assumed that, but added that since she was busy, he could handle it himself. She told him to stay still, chiding him for being so clumsy that he'd hurt himself further. Realizing she was playing some kind of game, he remembered how girls had used this tactic in the past, acting caring and attentive at first, only to later abandon him, leaving him humiliated. Seeing Yuma as another manipulator, he was sure it was all a trap for a Sigma like him. So he got up, telling her to keep her distance since they'd only known each other a day. Yuma asked what he was talking about, insisting she was only bandaging him. He clarified he wasn't angry but wanted her to know he liked someone else. He waxed poetic, saying life was full of encounters but, unfortunately, her chance had passed. If they'd met sooner, things might have been different, but if he changed his mind too easily, she wouldn't respect him either. Clearly, nothing was getting through to this intense girl, who now seemed convinced he loved her deeply. Frustrated, she went off the rails, and our boy dashed straight for the taxi. From above, the madwoman observed, determined not to lose him to any of those other cursed women. Meanwhile, Bingsu was asleep at the police station. When Chen Yuan finally got home, he was exhausted from the chaotic day and just wanted to rest. But as he entered, he heard the shower running. He spotted a silhouette through the mist and thought the president enjoyed testing his patience. An angel whispered for him to stay calm, while the devil encouraged him to go in. But then an unknown girl stepped out of the shower, commenting on how cozy it was. Spotting Chen Yuan, she froze, terrified, and screamed for help. Later, she sobbed to Kiki, claiming she would never marry now that she'd been seen. Losing his patience, Chen Yuan was about to take his own shower, but Kiki's friend was furious, saying the rascal had seen everything. Kiki tried explaining that Chen Yuan was a good friend, but Meng Meng found her defense suspicious and demanded to know what was going on between them. She ran to Kiki, warning her to avoid lowlifes, especially now that she had a new house and was a successful streamer with millions of followers. She couldn't afford to associate with someone like him. Embarrassed, Kiki protested, explaining that Chen Yuan was actually an exceptional man. She hadn't told Meng Meng the house wasn't hers. But Meng Meng kept ranting about him, saying he was no match for the man who had spent a fortune at yesterday's auction. Just then, someone knocked on the door, announcing a delivery. Meng Meng inquired, and they replied it was a piano from Chen Yuan. Expecting an old piano, she was stunned when a helicopter landed in front of the house, delivering it alongside an armed battalion. When they finally placed it in the living room, Meng Meng grew impatient and pulled off the cover. She was momentarily blinded by the crystal piano's brilliance. Realizing it was genuine, she began questioning her assumptions about him. A news report then played, showing Chen Yuan as the mysterious millionaire who had spent over $500 million at the auction. Poor Meng Meng was floored, realizing her mistake. Kiki turned to her with a knowing smile, reminding her that she had said Chen Yuan was exceptional. Just then, he entered, seeing the piano finally in place. Coming down the stairs, looking effortlessly charming, Chen Yuan asked Kiki if she liked the piano. She replied it was stunning, maybe even too much. He mentioned he had a business meeting and asked if she wanted to join him. With Meng Meng staying over, Kiki apologized, saying she couldn't go. Chen Yuan left without much thought. At that moment, his system registered a connection with Meng Meng, granting 20 points. Chen Yuan was unimpressed. This was Kiki's best friend, and he didn't want her crossing boundaries. While Kiki happily played music, Meng Meng could only think about having someone as handsome as Chen Yuan. Uninterested in meaningless company, he called Ruoyu to join him on the business trip. She was upset, noting how he'd been distant and now only invited her for something so casual. Frustrated, she muttered that all men were the same, and his favorability score dropped to 95. Chen Yuan, unaware of her complaints, wondered why his points dropped despite doing nothing. As he met her, he asked if the point deduction was because he hadn't picked her up. But, in classic Sigma fashion, he brushed it off, deciding to call his chubby friend to arrange a ride instead, knowing apologies would just stir up unnecessary drama. Meanwhile, in another building, a man was chatting with his friend, asking if this Kun Huang really lived up to his reputation. The chubby guy's father, who was nearby, was intrigued, mentioning he'd heard the kid was very wealthy. The friend confirmed, saying the boy was indeed impressive. Not far off, an older man with Shutong, a new employee, watched them, curious about why such high-profile people were there. She asked if this guy was someone important, and the old man warned her to keep an eye on the Mohawk guy, the wealthiest one present. Surprised, Shutong wondered why a millionaire would think someone else was even richer. As she scanned the room, she noticed a familiar face among a couple. Was it really him? The man greeted Chen Yuan, who acknowledged the gesture, commenting on how humble he was to have come in person to meet him. The son then arrived, mentioning that everyone was eager to meet him. Chen Yuan felt flattered, saying they were all very courteous. As papers scattered on the floor, Shutong wondered why the owner of the entire complex had come to personally meet Chen Yuan. The older man explained that the building had taken 9 years to construct and was a symbol of luxury. Over 300 businesses operated there, forming a full-fledged shopping mall with stores, cinemas, karaoke bars, and everything else imaginable. The top floor even boasted a prestigious commer. However, Ryu wasn't impressed, questioning why Chen Yuan had brought her along just to follow him around. The old man offered to show him each floor, and Chen Yuan asked Ryu what she thought of the building. She remarked that it was decent. Chen Yuan, turning to the older man, then declared that if she liked it, he would buy it for her, no questions asked. The older man, taken aback, asked if he truly intended to put the entire property in her name. Chen Yuan confirmed, saying he'd do it without hesitation if it would make her happy. Sile area. Ryu hesitated, admitting that it was too much to accept since it was an entire building. But Chen Yuan insisted, explaining that this would secure her financially forever. As she thought about the responsibilities she'd soon face managing her family's company, she began to understand his intentions. Perhaps it was time to let go of her princess attitude, as he gained 3 points in her favor, surpassing 98, along with another 20 points in strength. The chubby friend intervened, confirming that everything was arranged and informing Chen Yuan that the total price was 2.6 billion. Chen Yuan promptly produced his black card, assuring them the funds would be transferred once the paperwork was in order. Moments later, the room burst into applause as the contract was finalized. Chen Yuan clarified that he was merely an investor, the real owner was Ms. Ryu. Embarrassed, she received congratulations, beginning to understand why her parents enjoyed their work so much. Maybe being spoiled wasn't so bad after all. Yet, she already revealed a darker side, enjoying the power of people bowing to her. Meanwhile, poor Shutong, observing from afar, asked her friend why so many people were gathered. Her friend explained that the entire building had just been purchased and gifted to a young woman in her 20s. Shutong watched from a distance but left before her friend could speak to her. The poor girl ran off, muttering that all of this should be hers, determined to reclaim Chen Yuan no matter what it took. Later, on the subway, Ryu was surprised and asked about his Ferrari. He replied that he enjoyed the simplicity of everyday life and liked spending time with her this way. Ryu then asked if he knew someone named Gao Xianian. He hesitated, asking if she meant the actress. She asked if he'd heard the rumors about her recent disputes, but he said he didn't follow celebrity gossip. She responded that she wasn't particularly interested in it either, although she'd recently heard about a guy who bought a piano as a gift but hadn't given it much thought. Chen Yuan broke into a nervous sweat, replying that it was interesting to know. She asked why he looked uncomfortable, and he explained that it was just the heat of the subway. After a while, he said goodbye, feeling like the experience had been a test of endurance, yet wondering if she was secretly testing him. A friend soon called him, mentioning that Bingsu had apparently been waiting for him at the dorm for 6 hours.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, it really helps. And for more content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see another part. I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you next time. Bye-bye.